This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto went back in time to help Naruko. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
They had attacked his village with new fighters and were everywhere when Naruto was fleeing through the forest from the Akatsuki. They had killed all of his friends and everyone he knew or had even spoken to for a short time, and now they were pursuing him. Madara was furious that the blonde had ruined his plans by destroying the statue that contained the beasts and then letting them go only to have them sealed inside Naruto to prevent the world from being leveled. His aging slowed to a crawl after he was given a higher regeneration. Nevertheless, Naruto needed to move in order to survive because he was still on their hit list. When Naruto encountered a huge cavern that was too steep to jump down and too wide to jump, he came to a complete stop. When Naruto heard rustling behind him, he turned to face the members with a stern expression. Each person's face was hidden by their cloak. "Go ahead. Take me out. You took everything from me." As he charged his chakra to create a giant Rasen Shuriken, Naruto was merely buying time. If he were to fall, he would take them down with him. "Naruto Uzumaki, you are hereby charged with leading the charge against peace for the whole world, trying to destroy leader Sama and destroying the Midogizo statue. Your sentence is death." In an attempt to survive, Naruto used all of his chakra and all of his nature chakra to create a Maelstrom Rasen Shuriken, which he used to confront the man's attack, which he had never seen before. For miles, there was a tremendous explosion, and as the shockwave spread across the nation, it toppled towers, trees, and people. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was alone with the summoning scroll, the sealing scroll for his clones, and a fragment of his cloak. All of the Akatsuki members who had pursued him were dead on the ground. A lone figure stood atop a hill. His ominous eyes gazed triumphantly at the region. "Even though I have to make a new plan, at least that pesky blonde is gone." Behind his mask, the man chuckled ominously before vanishing into thin air. He failed to notice that Naruto was standing on black ground, which was the ideal kanji for time. "Naruto, I have given you a new chance, make it last." Standing atop a tree, a mysterious woman gazed out over the battlefield. "And may you find love where you're going, you deserve it." The woman vanished into the light beam, X alongside Naruto. X before he heard screaming and the sound of houses collapsing beneath someone's feet. Naruto was enjoying a pleasant dream. When Naruto got up, he realized he was in his former apartment, and his appearance returned to that of a 12-year-old. "Nani?" Shaking his head, Naruto turned to face the fox, who was currently tearing up Konoha. "Just fantastic." After changing into larger clothing, Naruto went to the beast and jumped out the window. He noticed that it suddenly shrank and that a barrier had been put up around it. Upon his arrival, he observed his mother, Kushina, and father, the fourth Hokage, holding down the fox while he sealed it away. "Oh my god, I can't let him finish and have to go through this again." "Halt!" Naruto turned to see a kunai in the hands of an Anbu. "Who are you?" "No time to explain." Avoiding the Anbu and even the retired third Hokage, who was. Naruto sat at the barrier. Naruto was, to put it mildly, a cage. Naruto broke through the barrier and slid all the way to his parents after creating a gigantic Rasengan and smashing it into it. However, it was too late. His parents were dying, and the Kyuubi had already been sealed. With a sigh, Naruto laid them both on their backs. He gave Minato a small scowl. "You know now this kid will have a terrible life." I go to hell with your trust me when I say he will have a terrible life." "She." "What? You said he, it's a she, Nani." When Naruto looked at the infant, he saw that it was a girl. "Juiced fantastic. And how do you know how she will live?" "You got to be kidding me. Who has your looks and her attitude?" After a moment of reflection, you could practically see a light bulb appear above their heads. "But how?" "Fighting the guy's henchman that caused this mess, used my ultimate technique and it must have opened up a portal of some sort." "What did we name you?" Naruto, how bad was your life?" 2 months old all the way up to 12 was terrible, absolutely terrible." "For what it's worth we are sorry. It's alright. Punched you in the gut when I met you in my seal, basically took care of my frustration the first time." That made Minato wince, and Kushina laughed. "You want to know something else? I'm glad my life was like that." "What?" "It gave me a reason to push on. At first all I wanted to do was become Hokage and gain respect, so I pushed myself to the limit. Every time I trained you would find me all night long doing things till I fell unconscious on the ground. It all helped in the end and I was more powerful than the first Hokage. Funny thing is I wanted to surpass all of the Hokage, even my hero the fourth Hokage." At that thought, Naruto grinned, and Kushina and Minato did too. "Well Naruto, What are you going to do now since you are here? Enroll in Anbu and change a few things from happening. Like what? First of all, the council manipulates the geezer over there and he has Itachi kill 5 members of his clan, including his father, that were conspiring for a coup d'etat. But when Danzo hires thugs to beat me one night as a cover, he sends his second best man in there and kills everyone disguised as Itachi. When Itachi arrives, he goes straight to his house and finds his mom and dad are dead, and his little brother Sasuke runs into the room, basically sending him on the wrong path from that point on. That's a lot to take in. Oh, and Danzo never disbanded Root, it's still going. That bastard. I'll kill him myself. All in due time. Anyways, I'm going to take care of this little one right here from the sidelines. Even though I hate to admit it, she has to go through that stuff, at least a little, to become who she was meant to. And who was that? The child of prophecy. You mean? Yes. We found that out. Minato produced a sheet of paper and gave it to Naruto. Give this to the third. I choose him to be Hokage after me again. That's what he gets for reading those books, and it's also a note to let you into Anbu with no questions asked. Thank you. Naruto, did you ever find anyone to love? Naruto clenched his fists and gazed at the ground. I came close. The day after we kissed, she was killed brutally in front of me by the same man who did all this. Would you like to know who it is? Yes, I would. Naruto. Obito Uchiha. How is that possible? He died in grass country by Iwanins. No, he almost did, but an elderly Madara saved him and replaced his crushed side with the cells of himself, basically making him almost insane, but he needed that little push, and tortured him till he turned evil. He never did. He fought on telling him he had to go home to his friends. The day he broke was when Rin was killed. Makes sense. He always had a crush on her, but she was more infatuated with Kakashi. Naruto hesitated for a moment before he burst out laughing. What's so funny? We're dying and you go ahead and laugh. Sorry mom, it's just that it was the same on my team. I liked this girl Sakura, and she liked Sasuke, and from the records I read on those 3 it was almost perfectly the same. The only difference was Rin didn't yell at the top of her lungs to tell Obito, who was right next to her, that he was a baka. That made Minato laugh too, and as his vision began to deteriorate, he grinned at his son. You mind adding one more thing onto this paper? What would you like, Naruto? Actually 2 things. First, I want to be the personal bodyguard of Naruko, but in secret, kinda like sitting a few seats away in the academy and such. Okay. And second, I want Ichiraku ramen to have a better place to cook at. Minato chuckled and jotted down the details after Kushina laughed. You really are your mother's son. Take good care of our daughter Naruto, or I'll come back from the dead, kill you, bring you back just to kill you again. Wouldn't be surprised. With a single tear in his eye, Naruto embraced his parents and picked up Naruko, giving her to them to hold before they left. As the passing of time passed, Naruto turned to see the third approaching and a few Anbu. Damn you, Minato, I could have done it in your place. You wouldn't have had the strength, old friend. As he watched Kushina close her eyes for the final time, Naruto let out a sigh. The man grinned up at Naruto as he turned to face Minato. I hope Naruko turns out to be just like you. After hearing Minato exhale one final time and his chest ceased to rise and fall, Naruto lifted Naruko up. He turned to see the new Hokages staring at him curiously and the Anbu in guarded stances when he heard someone clearing their throat behind him. Did you two know each other? Yes, we were friends. I'm older than I look actually. Anyways, he wanted me to give you this. The elderly man sighed as Naruto gave him the note Minato had written. Guess I'm coming out of retirement and you report to Anbu headquarters in the morning. You need to choose your mask. Before the Hokage stopped him, Naruto nodded and proceeded to lead Naruko to a house. By the way, what is your name? Kase. I don't know my last name. I was an orphan alongside Minato, and before you ask, no, we are not part of the same clan even though I have the same hair and eyes. We checked. It is simply coincidental. As he watched, Naruto left to locate the apartment where he had spent so many years living. It would now be his. The following morning. Naruto entered the Anbu headquarters before the laughing Anbu stopped him. Sorry kid, this is Anbu only. Honestly, I could kick your ass to the moon and back if I wanted, but right now I'm here to get my mask. Hokage's orders. Watch it, Sonny. I don't have much patience today because of the beast attack. The man was leaning against a wall when Naruto smiled and extended his hand. Go check the Hokage if you must, but I'm going in now. While a furious Anbu went off to locate the captain and retrieve his mask, Naruto kept on walking. He snickered when he saw Yamato's mask when he got there. Well. Hey Tenzo, could you please show me where I can pick up my mask? How are you aware of my name? I know a lot of things. After leaving Tenzo stunned, Naruto continued walking until he reached the main office, where the secretary grinned and glanced down at Naruto. "Hi there, young man. How may I be of assistance to you?" "I'm here to see the captain about my mask. But masks are for the Anbu, you're not even a genin yet, come back in a few years." With a sigh, Naruto's ki rose. "Do you really think I'd get this far without getting a pass? The Hokage sent me to get my mask." "Let him in." Naruto scowled a little when he turned to see an Anbu wearing a weasel mask. "Hello, Itachi. I take it you're a captain for Anbu?" "Yes, I am. Would you mind assisting me in locating my mask?" "Follow me." Naruto heard the door behind him close and click, and he shook his head while laughing. Naruto followed Itachi into a room that had a variety of Anbu gear and masks on the wall. "You are very intelligent, as I should have predicted. What do you want to ask?" "Who are you and how did you get here? You want the truth or the total lie that you accept because the truth would be too weird to handle?" "I'll take both. I need to know your alibi in case anyone comes asking around." "All right, let me tell you the truth first. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. A few years later, I'm being hunted down by an organization that wants to take the Kyuubi out of me. I eventually track them all down to the leader, who is the last member. However, he overcomes me and murders everyone I've even looked at. I continue to flee from more of his thugs, and when I reach a dead end, I counterattack with my strongest weapon. Time and space must have been torn apart by the collision. I was present for the Kyuubi attack when I woke up. I probably should have gone with the lie." Naruto rubbed the back of his head and laughed. "All right, so here's the lie. My name is Kase, I'm older than I appear, and I don't have a last name because I was an orphan when the 4th Hokage was a child. When Naruko Uzumaki turns 4, I will be her personal bodyguard." Itachi shook his head and gave Naruto a grave expression. "Do you know what's going to happen to me and my brother? A terrible fate if I don't change a few things." As he worked through some issues, Itachi glanced at the ground. "So anyways, onto my mask. Oh, right, this is our main storage so you can find all of the masks here." After nodding and searching through the endless rows of masks, Naruto thought he would never find one until he turned to his right and noticed a red mask with a fox face on it. Naruto smiled. "This one." Reaching out, Naruto took the fox mask and examined it from top to bottom. "Are you certain? Nowadays, a lot of people dislike foxes, and your issue is." "My fate is my problem. I am bound to it, and there is only one way to free myself from it, and that means dying. I've long since come to terms with my fate. This is a sign that I will be the only one carrying this load. However, Naruko won't. She will rely on me when things get tough. The fox is loyal and truthful, but it is also crafty and sly. It is the ideal mask that I could ever need." Naruto smiled behind the mask after donning it. A step closer, Naruto turned, found a suitable Anbu suit, put it on, and made sure everything was in its proper place. "You look like a true shinobi, even for your size." Naruto developed a tick mark, and Itachi laughed. "Hey, in a few years, I'll be hitting a major growth spurt. I will speak louder than you." Naruto snickered a little and relaxed a bit. "Honestly, I can use my height to my advantage. People will underestimate a small Anbu." "True. Oh, and by the way, keep my secret a secret, you're the only one who knows that is alive." "I will." With all of his strength, Naruto left the room to face the world. "A new life, it's time to make the most of what I know." Naruto laughed as he turned to face the Anbu member who had pushed him into the wall and was staring at him. "I'm sorry about earlier, I went to the Hokage and he said the 4th Hokage hand-picked you to be someone's bodyguard, that you were very powerful. It's alright, but I do believe I have to get one more thing." The man smiled when Naruto tapped his arm to indicate that he needed a tattoo. "I'll help with that. Thanks. May I ask what your name is?" "Everyone calls me Wolf, but you can call me Tugo." "Hello Tugo, I'm Fox, but you can call me Kase." "Hello Kase, let's go take care of that blank arm of yours." With a bandage over his arm, Naruto accompanied Tugo out of the main area and into a tattoo parlor where he promptly received his Anbu tattoo before leaving the room. "I guess I should stop scratching because it itches so bad." Naruto felt his stomach growl, so he went to Ichiraku's, where he sat down at his favorite seat and grinned at Tucci, who had his back to him. He admitted that he missed them a lot and wanted some ramen for nostalgia's sake, and he wished he could tell them who he was and how they had helped him as a child, but he thought they wouldn't believe him without evidence that actually showed he was telling the truth. "Oi, Tucci, I'll have one extra large beef deluxe to start out with." "I'm on my way, sir." Looking at the crowded street, Naruto's smile widened even more. Although it wasn't his Konoha, it was nice to be back. "Here you go, sir." Call me K's, this will be my regular eating place for a very long time. Well, you already know my name, and I hope you have a good time here, Mr. K's. We always like the extra business. Naruto smiled as he savored the delectable food he had been craving for months. It feels good to return. After 5 years, From atop a building, Naruto observed as civilians once more pursued Naruko while yelling that she had done nothing. I apologize for not responding sooner, but you need to strengthen your desire to show the world who you are. They believe you did even though you didn't. Upon capturing her, Naruto struck the villagers like a hammer, sending them flying in all directions. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Who are you? Someone that cares. Yeah right, that's what villagers say to trick me. With a sigh, Naruto lifted her. My name is Anbu, and I could harm you at any time if I so desired, wouldn't I? It's true. Mister, where are you taking me? To your new apartment. The Hokage doesn't like it when you live on the streets. Until he reached the apartment, Naruto carried Naruko on his shoulders and showed her inside. All of this belongs to me? Yup, all yours. Will you remain with me? Naruto sighed as he glanced down at the girl with her naive puppy dog eyes. As much as I would like to, I can't. I have my own affairs to take care of. Okay mister, thanks a lot for helping me. I'm happy to, and remember there is always someone out there who thinks you're great and worth everything in the world. Are you my father? Naruto came to a halt and turned to face the girl. No, your father died in the Kyuubi attack, but I made a promise I would take care of you as best I can, but he wanted me to give you something if you asked that. Naruko took the paper giddily and opened it, and when she simply held it, Naruto tilted his head. Naruto pulled out a letter he had written himself, but he knew that the words on the paper came from Minato himself because he said it to him in the seal. Is there a problem? I can't read. With a laugh, Naruto grabbed the paper from her. I'll read it for you. It says, Dear Naruko. I can't tell you who I am because I have a lot of enemies, but I can tell you that I love you and that I believe you can do anything you set your mind to. I hope the village treated you like a hero, but something tells me they didn't, and for that I'm sorry. My friend has sworn to protect you even if you don't know it, so I apologize for any pain I may have caused you. You'll understand why I say that later. I hope you grow into a fine young lady and an even better kunoichi. I love you more than life, and I believe in you. Keep those two things in mind, and you will always have me in your heart. Regards, your father. The girl before Naruto was wiping her eyes as he folded the piece of paper. I will make you proud, Daddy. Even though she wasn't yet aware of it, Naruto grinned behind his mask when she turned to face him. He could see the will of fire burning brightly in her soul. Kid, don't let any of these villagers bring you down. You are destined for greatness. I know it just by looking into your eyes. I have to leave now. Missions to do, things to blow up, damsels to save. Bye, mister. And thank you. As he leapt out the window, Naruto waved to the girl. As Naruko considered what the man had said, she glanced up at the moon. I am meant to be great. I wonder his meaning was. Naruko noticed the Hokage monument when she swiveled her head to the side. People will respect me if I become Hokage, perhaps. Additionally, they should not treat me like dirt on their shoes. As the moon reflected off the mountain in her face, Naruko's fire grew even brighter. She gazed up at them so intently that you could almost see the Hokage grinning down on her. After 6 years. You asked for me, Hokage, Sama? Yes, as an Anbu you have an exceptional record. The only problem is that a few beatings on Naruko have gotten past your watch. I was on missions those time. I asked an Anbu to cover for me, but that person might not have liked Naruko that much. I will deal with them. So what did you want me here for? Well, 3 things. First, I need to know your identity, and that joke you call a backstory isn't going to cut it. I checked your DNA and it's almost exactly the same as Minato's, Kushina's, and Naruko's. So who exactly are you? With a sigh, Naruto took off his mask and started telling his tale. After he was done, he noticed the elderly man sitting there, gazing at Naruto. So what Itachi said was true. With a tiny tick mark, Naruto sat up after toppling over. I told him not to tell. I gave him specific instructions to tell me anything about you. It's for the village's safety. You know I'm going to have a hard time believing this even though the DNA agrees. After raising his shirt and directing chakra into his seal, Naruto saw it materialize. Additionally, Naruto produced an orange book that was familiar to him but unfamiliar to the elderly man. This is volume 10, 3 isn't even out yet, is it? With a TS King sound, Naruto withdrew the book from the old man's grasp as his eyes widened. Not happening, old man, so what are the other 2 reasons you wanted me here? After clearing his throat and gathering his thoughts, the elderly man turned to face Naruto. Well, now I believe you. So anyways, Naruko has been enrolled in the academy, and since you're her bodyguard you need to enter as well. You have a choice to be a teacher or a student. With your size it won't be too hard. She has a lot of chakra because of furball and the teachers won't teach her well. If all goes well then she should fail twice. I will be her teacher for 2 years, and for the last one I need Iruka Amino for the last year. For the first 2 years I will be in disguise, under my best henge I think, and for the last I will be a student. The other? It seems that Naruko has become. Well, I won't sugarcoat it. One day when she came in and we started talking, when I mentioned you she got a faraway look and a blush appeared on her face. She doesn't know your identity, but I have a feeling she likes you. Nani. As Naruko prepared for the academy, the yell reverberated throughout the village. She was looking forward to her first day and hoped to meet people her own age for the first time. Only the Hokage, the ramen people, and the fox Anbu treated her normally. All other children's parents kept them away from her. She kept thinking about him, how he had saved her so many times, how kind he was, and how he treated her like a regular person. I'm happy to see someone like him in the world. In the hopes of arriving at the academy on time, Naruko packed up her belongings and set off. Upon her arrival, she approached a teacher after observing children entering classrooms. Hello. Can you tell me where my class is? No, get away from me. As she turned to leave, Naruko glanced at the ground. She felt a hand on her shoulder and noticed a man grinning down at her. You're Naruko, right? Yes. You're in my class. I hope you have a great time this year. My class is at the end of the hall on the left. Hurry up. Naruto turned to glare at the woman after Naruko nodded, and she returned the glare. Don't you know what that thing is? That thing is a person who had no control over what happened to her. Let me ask you a question. Oh yeah. What, you demon lover? What if that was your kid? The woman was standing there looking shocked, and Naruto snarled at her. Would you treat yours the same way? Call yours a thing and a demon spawn? Think about it. Naruto turned and entered his classroom. He scowled when he saw that the children were seated apart from Naruko. Before we begin, why does no one sit next to this girl? Because our parents said she was bad. And why is she bad? I dunno, but the adults don't like her. So, why do you listen to your parents on who to like and not like? Next they will be telling you when to go to the bathroom and not to. Because they will ground us if they knew we were playing with her. So making someone feel better about themselves is not worth being grounded for a few hours? What do you mean, sensei? It's not my place to tell, but I bet an A on your first test that if you got to know her you would like her. Now let us begin. My name is Kamina Yutako. I am a Chunin and I am your teacher for this year. Before one girl approached Naruko and took a seat next to her, the majority of the kids were arguing among themselves about whether or not to aim for the A. My name is Camilia. What's yours? My name is Naruko. Nice to meet you, Camilia. The sight of Naruko getting along with someone made Naruto smile. He was trying, at least. While he organized everything, Naruto allowed the children to converse with one another. He observed that while the others went outside for lunch, Camilia and Naruko continued their conversation. So Camilia, was the risk worth it? Yeah, I found out that me and Naruko have a lot in common. Goody, now go eat lunch you two while I take care of some last-minute paperwork. Camilia and Naruto strolled outside and conversed. Camilia looked at all the children who were staring at them as they sat beneath a tree. Do you get this a lot? Yes, mostly from the adults. When things get worse, Fox comes and saves me on most occasions. Fox. He's an Anbu. I bet he's really cute too. His voice sounds so rugged too. You have an Anbu looking out for you. Yeah, it's not as fun as you think though. They conversed for what felt like hours, but it was only minutes before the bell rang and they went inside to learn. Throughout the year, Camilia would sneak along whenever her parents came to pick her up, ignoring Naruko and even sneering at her. When they turned away, she apologized, and Naruko understood. If it meant maintaining their friendship, she would put up with it, except for the day her mother stormed in and seized her arm. I just heard from Yusira's mom that you have been hanging out with that demon brat. But mom. No buts, I'm taking you out of the academy and you will be in the family business whether you like it or not, and if I catch you even looking at that thing I will spank you so hard you won't be able to sit down for a month. It was also the day before the graduation test, and Camilia waved goodbye to Naruko while crying. Tears filled Naruko's eyes, and her eyes burned. She destroyed her friend's life by forcing her to leave the academy. Why did this have to happen to her? As he observed from a distance, Naruto wished he could console her in some way, but he was aware that this was not possible. Among other things, I have to fail her tomorrow as well so that she can learn the summoning contract while Jiraiya is here for that brief period of time, take the Chunin exams during the attack, and reach wave. With a sigh, Naruto turned away and began marking papers. This is some tough shit, and Naruto deserves more credit. He moaned as the day went on and realized Naruto was gone. I'll be right back, kids, I need to take care of something. Naruto made a hand signal as he slid into the restroom. His Anbu armor materialized in a puff of smoke, and he donned his mask. He vanished into a whirlpool of foliage. When he reached the tree atop the Hokage monument, Naruko was indeed perched atop the fort's head. You're a bad girl. Emerging from the shadows, Naruto took a position behind Naruko. Aren't you supposed to be in class? No one cares if I'm there or not. Your father would care, I care, your teacher cares, your friend cares. My father is dead, you only care because it's your job. My teacher only cares because it's his job, and I got my friend kicked out of the academy because we were just friends. Naruko was slapped across the face after feeling herself lifted off the ground. She looked fearfully at the Anbu in front of her after being put back down. Now listen here. Your father may be dead, but he cares, even if you don't believe it. I care because you are special, not because it was my job. Your teacher cares that you succeed in life so you can survive as a great and powerful kunoichi, and your friend would want you to carry on. Your father believes in you. I believe in you. But if you keep up this attitude, you will never do the great things I foresaw you doing. But I. No buts, I'm going to tell you something, Naruko. Not even the Hokage knows this. What? I have a Kekkei Genkei, I am able to see the future. Yeah, right. Oh yeah. I know that you are going to fail 2 years in a row because you can't pass one of the tests. You won't officially pass year 3 either, but you do something amazing and the Hokage states that you were an undercover genin to bring out a traitor. You will get a teammate that will treat you like a sibling and another teammate that is serious but looks out for his friends. You will get a perverted sensei that will read books in front of all of you that are full of smut. I know much more than that as well, but things change. Naruko, you need to keep going, no matter what. Something big is coming up and the village will need you in the end. Looking up at the man before her, Naruko noticed something familiar but was unable to identify it. Will you keep going? Even for me? Yes, but you owe me ramen? Deal. With a laugh, Naruto departed for Ichiraku's, Naruko following closely behind. Naruko realized he was correct as the year progressed. She just failed the 3rd time with new senseis, a man named Naruko and another named Mizuki, after failing the 1st and 2nd times. The new pupils were a little strange. The only one who truly caught her attention was a boy named Kaze who shared her appearance. Like her, he was an orphan, and although he passed, he didn't seem to enjoy it as much as the others. Mizuki was waiting for her when she got home. There is a way for you to pass, Naruko, but you will have to listen to everything I say, understand? Hi sensei. Following Naruko from the rooftops as she made her way to the tower, Naruto grinned to himself when she fell into Mizuki's trap exactly as he had. Everything went as planned in his mind. After she joins Team 7, he will train her and provide her with instructions that are essentially ideas, hints, and tips. In any case, that was the plan. He also needed to deal with that crush. The old man suggested that Naruto pretend to be dead, and he knew that this could go either way in a positive or negative way. In order to honor his memory, she could fight to get stronger, or she could become an Avenger and try to gain power quickly so that she could kill his killer. Either way, it was a risky possibility, but it was the only thought he had. Since he put an end to the Uchiha clan massacre, Sasuke was at least now amiable. It was fairly straightforward. Itachi only killed 20 clan leaders who were preparing to sow the seeds of hatred to begin the coup. After getting a quick drink to clear his head, Root Anbu came in to finish it. Naruto swiftly killed Root Anbu before Itachi returned, and it goes without saying that Itachi is attempting to repay him by constantly bothering him in his own way. As Naruko crept into the tower, took the scroll, and left for the forest, Naruto grinned. As she ran, Naruto swiftly followed her and remained hidden, but as his gaze strayed up and down her body, he shook his head. He surmised that having the Kyuubi implanted in you as a child causes your body to become more proportionate. Unbeknownst to her, a few heads turned when she was only 13 but had the body of a 16-year-old. The primary issue was the jumpsuit, which was tied around her waist to better hold the scroll and of which she was not yet wearing the top. As Naruto grew older, he became aware that his father's tan was a permanent feature of his face, and that Hinata thought his eyes and hair were stunning. And despite his malnutrition, he always had a pack on his abs. It started out as a 2-pack but soon expanded to a well-defined 6-pack with his runner's build, which was noticeably strong but had lean muscles. He had to give the Kyuubi credit for helping him escape from people, but the worst or best, depending on who you ask, is that it wasn't content with his natural size, so he grew up quickly. When Tsunade gave him her first physical, she initially believed it to be genjutsu. Sitting in a tree, Naruto watched Naruko practice their first jutsu, the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and laughed. When he said he didn't know any genjutsu, he could still see her wide eyes and jaw drop. With a sorrowful sigh, he touched her icy body as it lay on the stones of the once powerful Konoha, nothing but rubble once more, and he could still see her lifeless eyes. He nearly cried out in agony, but he kept in mind that he was on guard, stalker duty. He saw Iruka dash into the field at that moment, and Naruto crept around to the tree he thought Mizuki had come to. He actually leapt directly in front of him, but he was unable to act until he confessed a few things, at which point Naruto punched him across the face to prevent him from disclosing the important information. Naruto grinned, hopped down, and dusted off his trousers after he fell to the ground squarely on his head. "Yo!" Naruto said nonchalantly as he approached Mizuki and knelt down to her level, kicking her once for good measure. Naruto said, "You trained really hard, you earned that jutsu." Naruko grinned, temporarily ignoring Mizuki's remarks. Iruka asked, somewhat irate, "You watched her?" Naruto got up and stretched. Finally, Naruto picked up the scroll and turned to leave, saying, "Yup." Iruka shouted, "Why didn't you stop her?" and Naruto hesitated. Naruto said, "Because." He then vanished into the forest, leaving Iruka irritated and Naruko flushed. Iruka put a hand on her shoulder after letting out a sigh. Naruko cheered when he said, "Let's go get some ramen." She then hurried to Ichiraku's to get the ramen she had been craving. Naruto placed the scroll on the desk and materialized in front of the Hokage. Naruto said, "You do know I'm going to tell her, right?" And the elderly man nodded while puffing on his pipe. Naruto laughed and went to the door after he said, "Actually, I was counting on it. No one can put it in words that will comfort yourself except for yourself." Naruto sighed as he asked, "So how are you going to deal with the crush?" The old man nodded before Naruto vanished in a flash of orange. "I will pretend to die, but a week after she formally becomes a genin, that way she can enjoy a little more time with Fox," Naruto said. Overlooking Naruko's apartment, Naruto sat on the roof and relaxed, allowing his senses to develop until he was able to identify Naruko's chakra. He knew she was safe because she was at ease. A person's chakra can reveal a lot about them, including whether they are calm, excited, in love, how to make them feel good, or how to make them feel terrible when they lie. They were discussing someone she liked, and he bet she was blushing. It's really interesting that her chakra suddenly spiked, but he knew what it was. By practicing Sage Jutsu with the toads, Naruto was able to sit still for days at a time. Naruto felt Naruko's chakra signature shift as he walked idly in the direction of her house, thinking, "Got to resign the contract, can't summon squat." Naruto watched her turn the corner after a few minutes. She blushed a little and smiled. She jumped a little in surprise as Naruto leapt and materialized next to her. When Naruko yelled, "Stop doing that," Naruto laughed and opened the door for her. They entered and Naruto teased, "Well, I could, but it's too much fun." Naruko was drooling over Naruto and sighed before placing a hand on her shoulder. Naruto sat down in a chair and looked at her. Before telling her about the Kyuubi, Naruto made small talk by saying, "I see you passed." He just nodded and said, "Oh," here and there as she continued to talk about how she got it from Iruka. At last, Naruto took a seat beside her and immediately silenced her by taking her hand. Naruto said gravely, "Naruko, it's time you learned something, time to discover why the villagers treat you the way they do." Naruko's eyes grew wide as she gazed up into Naruto's mask. "Not going to sugarcoat it for you. 13 years ago the Kyuubi attacked, it can't be killed. It has to be sealed into a child. Usually I think the age limit is about a week old unless they had a special chakra that could suppress it, which the previous container had, and she didn't have it sealed in her till she was 13 or so. Anyways, the 4th Hokage had to seal it away before it destroyed the rest of the village, so he sealed it in you. Before you go off, listen to me. It's a gift and a curse. You are strong, Naruko, and I believe you will go far, fighting to prove everyone wrong. Funny thing is they do things to you, but I wonder what they would do if you were their child. Course if you were well you wouldn't live very long. Only Uzumaki can withstand the power of the Kyuubi, so if it was anyone else, it would be out attacking the village again." Naruto said slowly, letting her absorb the information, and she just stood there in shock, her eyes wide and her pupils the size of pinheads. Her hands shook a little. She appeared to come back to life when Naruto took her hand in his. "Just telling you, Iruka knows, I know, all the village knows, like the ramen people, those who treat you like a normal being. Take hold of them, protect them, keep them safe. Life is short, so enjoy it, but train hard as well, make them your precious people to hold on to forever. Become stronger to show those people that you are not the fox, that you are a bright young girl that was chosen on a dark night." Naruto replied, and she trembled until he hugged her and she began to relax. Naruto eventually heard her breathing become calm and steady, and when he looked down, he saw that she was asleep. Naruto shivered as he picked her up and carried her into the bedroom before placing her on the bed. He gulped a little as the light struck her hair just so that it appeared as though a halo was above her. However, a hand sprang out and seized his arm before he could move. He sighed and made Naruko scoot over and slide into the bed with him, putting his arms around her waist and drawing her to his chest as he turned to see her staring up at him with wide eyes and a beseeching expression. Feeling that their bodies were a perfect fit, like two puzzle pieces in a box or a pair of spoons in a drawer, he blushed a little. With a sigh, Naruto closed his eyes and went to sleep, making sure to activate his mask seal so that only he could remove it. He was glad he did, too, because when he woke up, his head was being pulled, and he saw Naruko attempting to remove his mask. He smirked beneath it and waited until she was in a vulnerable position before grabbing her hand and making her yell in shock and fall back onto the bed, blushing profusely at being discovered, which made Naruto laugh. You could almost feel the smirk on Naruto's face as he asked, "You really think I wouldn't set up something special for my mask?" Naruko huffed. Naruko tilted her head as Naruto grinned and ruffled her hair before leaving for the door. She said, "Where are you going?" and Naruto gestured toward the clock. Naruto said, his eyes sparkling, "Got to go see who is going to be in whose teams." Then he vanished in an instant. Before her eyes widened and she hurriedly began the day's ritual, Naruko glanced at the clock. Everyone placed bets on who would win when Naruto and the other Jonin who were observing the class appeared in a tree. It was a lot of fun. When Naruto was the first genin teacher, he participated in it. Until he demonstrated his power, many people made fun of him. Since he was too strong to battle the kids, Naruto simply gave up on his goal of becoming a Chunin and followed in the eternal genin's footsteps, figuring that a jacket wouldn't be particularly comfortable anyhow. A Jonin asked, "So who's betting?" and Naruto held up his hand. Before putting his money down, Naruto declared, "I bet Tactical of Ino. Shika.cho on Asuma, Tracker Team conspiring of Hinata, Kiba, and Shino for Kurenai, and Heavy Hitter Team of Naruko, Sasuke, and K's for Kakashi." Other people did the same. Before climbing into the tree, Naruto created a clone, which is now in the classroom. Kiba naturally yelled out as the students soon filed in, with Naruko coming in third. Everyone looked at Kei's head as she said, "Being a ninja means you need to be observant, take a look at her forehead, dog breath." Sure enough, the leaf headband was on top of her head. Naruto gave his clone a smile before it returned the nod and faced the class. When Iruka entered the room, she ordered everyone to sit down and stop talking. He smiled at Naruko, who smiled back, and then he expressed his pride in everyone before starting to work. He pulled out the list and started listing the individuals. Naruto grinned as he accepted his winnings after he said, "Team 7 is Naruko, Sasuke, and K's. Your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki." Naruto took more money after he said, "Team 8 is Shino, Hinata, and Kiba. Your Jonin sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi." Naruto chuckled as he accepted the remaining cash as Iruka continued, smiling and not really caring anymore while glancing at the ground. "Team 9 will be Ino, Shikimaru, and Choji. Your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi." Prior to forcing Kakashi from the tree, Naruto exclaimed, "Don't be late," and produced a lighter as Kakashi gave a forceful nod while putting his hand to his punch. They had spoken some time ago, and he was certain that he would never be late again after that day. After grinning, Naruto vanished and reappeared inside a restroom stall, switching with his clone and putting his Anbu equipment back into his seal. Kakashi was among the first to arrive, as it turned out. Naruto vanished in a fire explosion and reappeared a second before Kakashi, who said, "Go to the roof, get to know a little about each other." Kakashi then vanished in a swirl of leaves. As Naruto smirked at Kakashi's shocked face, or as shocked as you could guess from that mosca, he thought, "Screw swirls. Explosions are so much better." Soon after, Naruko and Sasuke approached and took seats beside Naruto. They all nodded. Who was foolish enough to miss that? "Okay, tell me your names, likes and dislikes, hobbies, and dream for the future." Kakashi said, "Okay, red, go," and Naruto nodded once more. His hair was streaked with red, which made it less likely that he was Naruko's twin. "Name is K's, no last name, likes are ramen, training, sunrises and sunsets and learning new jutsu. Dislike are, the Uchiha clan from the future that always tried to rape my ass, the wait for ramen, fatigue during training, fangirls, arrogant assholes who think they are better than everyone else, and people who can't see past something the person didn't have control over, Hobbies are writing music, singing and training. Dream for the future is to right wrongs and stop the cycle of hatred. Kakashi looked at Sasuke and nodded. Naruto started laughing, and even Sasuke had to smile when he said, "My name is Sasuke Uchiha, and I like my clan, training, tomatoes, and my brother. I dislike fangirls, haughty people, spicy foods, and gulps. My mother's meat surprise. My hobbies are training and reading. My dream for the future is to surpass my brother and marry a nice woman and have a family to pass my knowledge onto." Kakashi nodded and glanced at Naruko. "My name is Naruko Uzumaki. My likes are ramen, training and fox. My dislikes are villagers who can't tell what a kunai and scroll are, the wait for ramen and that mask of foxes. My hobbies are tasting different ramen and growing a garden. My dream is to become the first and most powerful female Hokage and to protect all of my precious people." Kakashi nodded and began to speak. His name is Kakashi Hitaki, Jonin. Likes are smut books, honoring his fallen comrades and being late. Dislikes are angry women, people who abandon their friend and people who disrespect his sensei and fallen comrades Rin Inuzuka and Obito Uchiha. His hobbies are reading smut, but the real reason behind it is to not only enjoy it but to find a woman who might actually like it and not criticize him for reading it. His dream is to honor his team's memory. Naruto said while Kakashi was trembling and narrowing his eyes. He hissed and vanished, saying, "Everyone meet me at training ground 7 at 7. Don't eat or you might puke. And K's meet me in the Hokage tower." Naruto shrugged and hurried after him. After Naruto entered the Hokage's office, Kakashi soon followed, growling at him. "Hokage. Sama, this boy has information about me that no one else knows." The Hokage said, "Calm down, Kakashi. He's a good friend of ours. It's okay." He questioned, "But he knows about Rin and Obito, how?" Naruto shrugged. After a few moments, the Hokage nodded and Naruto told Kakashi his story. When he finished, Kakashi's eyes widened and he sat in a chair. "Something I'm not going to tell you unless the Hokage gives the okay." How is this possible, Aimi? Kakashi got to his feet as Naruto remarked, "I don't even know, all I know is that a few things I left out, like some info about Obito you want, like." He said, "Tell me." Naruto shook his head. Naruto sighed as the Hokage said, "I am interested too, Naruto-kun, go ahead and tell us." Kakashi became enraged when Naruto said solemnly, "The person who is the cause of all the damage, death, and destruction is Obito Uchiha. He is alive at this very moment. How dare you? Obito was 1,000 times better than you. I saw him get crushed." "Ho. Let me continue, Kakashi. Yes, you did see half of him get crushed, and normally no one would survive from that, but there is a reason. Madara Uchiha is alive, very old and dying but alive. He knows his time is almost up, so he had some of his cells in an Uzumaki cells, I'm not sure which, but that person could use chakra chains, implanted into Obito, making him whole again. I theorize that Uchiha is so loyal that nothing can break their spirit. Even Madara was loyal to his cause to the very end, so what would make Obito break? Rin's death, but something like that shouldn't change him, correct? I think that Madara's cells messed with his head, changing him to fit Madara's means thus creating a madman. But he wouldn't go down without a fight, so he held on to one last thought before he lost it, peace, but that one that can be changed into something more sinister, like let's say trying to take over the world with a genjutsu bounced off the moon to make everyone his slave, thus creating peace." Naruto stated calmly, and Kakashi just looked at Naruto like he was crazy. Kakashi seemed to deflate when Naruto said, "Bet you want proof? Well, I don't have proof, my word, and an event that can't be explained. Tell me exactly how the nine-tailed fox could suddenly appear in the center of Konoha. How? It was impossible unless someone summoned it, and only Madara Uchiha was capable of doing that. Not only that, but he also had a special ability of the Sharingan, it's called Kamui. You see, Kamui is a visceral jutsu that is very rare, only one person ever had it, and that was Obito Uchiha. It allowed the person to send someone or thing to a different dimension. It also allowed them to make themselves intangible. Both eyes have different abilities in the use of Kamui. The left eye, the one that you have, Kakashi, is based on line of sight. It will create a swirling vortex and draw the person into it. You saved several people by using that, including myself. The right eye is very unique. It allows Obito to turn intangible. Basically, it sends any part of the body necessary to the dimension and out of harm's way for a brief moment in time, making it appear you are simply phasing through. It's another thing that proves, yet doesn't prove he is alive." Naruto said, then shrugged as he leaned against the wall, allowing Kakashi to digest. After a few minutes the man sighed before glancing at Naruto. He asked, and Naruto grinned, "So, what are you going to do now?" "Sasuke is all yours. Naruko is mine to teach, as well as I'm going to sign the Toad contract and right a few wrongs starting with Team 7's first sea mission in about. Naruto looked at his calendar. Naruto walked toward the door after saying, 2 months. However, he stopped when he placed his hand on the handle. Obito is a good man, and I plan on making him uncorrupted. Tsunade made a jutsu off of Obito's way to create more cells. Cultivate if you will, and if I can get 1 cell from Obito's original flesh I can make enough cells to replace Madara's. That way Obito should become whole again after a bit of rehab to clear his head of thoughts that aren't his. Naruto said prior to leaving the room and allowing the 2 individuals to speak. Before locking onto his target and jumping off to capture Naruko for the final time, Naruto changed into his Anbu outfit and regulated his breathing. She was chatting with Sasuke in the middle of a training field when Naruto arrived. Naruto listened to what they had to say by extending his hearing. Naruko shrugged when Sasuke asked, "So what do you think Kakashi Sensei wanted with K's?" Sasuke nodded as Naruko answered, "Dunno, seems like a nice guy though, hate for him to get into trouble you know." When Sasuke asked, "So, who is Fox?" Naruko glowed like a Christmas tree, not only because she was proud of him but also because her crush made her as red as Rudolph's nose. As Sasuke glanced around, Naruko dreamily remarked, just an Anbu who keeps track of me. He should be in the trees right now watching us, making sure I'm safe." Can't sense him, he's pretty good." They turned when they heard rustling and saw K's smiling as he approached them. They nodded when Naruto said, "Hey guys, sorry I'm late." Naruko said, "Hey K's, what took you so long?" They both started to perspire as Naruto said, "Oh you know, a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way around." He then sat down next to them. Naruto nodded when Sasuke asked, "So K's, you said you played music?" Naruto laughed and said, "Yes, I do. It's a hobby, plus they say that music soothes the savage beast." He then sat down beside them and gave them a quick glance. Naruto grinned and the other 2 stared at him as he said, "Okay guys, I only talked with Kakashi Sensei for 5 minutes. The rest of the time I was looking at his record as a Jonin Sensei. He hasn't passed a single team, before us that is." The 2 nodded, and K's grinned before an Anbu wearing a fox mask appeared. Naruko blushed instantly. You see, the academy test was to root out the unprepared or unskilled ninja. The official test for becoming a genin is up to the Jonin. You have to use teamwork to get 2 bells. He is supposed to make you hungry and tired so you can't think straight, so you fight for yourself to get a bell. I'm telling you now, we have to stick together as a team, got that? Naruto said. Naruko nodded and took his hand, and the 2 of them vanished in an instant as the Anbu said, "Come on Naruko, time to go get some ramen." When Sasuke asked, "Who was that?" Naruto laughed and said, "Naruko's crush." He then got up and dusted off his trousers. "Anyways, I didn't want to say this in front of Naruko just yet, but you will be trained by Kakashi Sensei. He will give me and Naruko scrolls to learn from. They don't like her problem, it's an S-class secret so don't ask, so they don't want Kakashi to teach her, so I volunteered for him and so technically I'm her teacher while being taught." Naruto laughed and Sasuke scowled. Sasuke grunted and Naruto nodded before turning to leave. "Damn council, can't let my teammate be taught." Naruko was eating her ramen frantically at the ramen booth while attempting to conceal her blush from the man seated beside her. Naruko stopped her eating adventures to look up at Naruto when he said, "Naruko, I have some news." Naruko looked worried but then smiled as Naruto said slowly and softly, "I'm going on a very dangerous mission tomorrow after I know you passed. I will be gone for a long time, a month actually, and I might not make it back." Naruko exclaimed, "Don't worry Fox. I know you can do it, you are the best ninja I know." Naruto sighed and shook his head. Before ruffling her hair once more and letting her finish her meal, he said, "Naruko, thanks." He then picked her up in a bridal style and vanished in a flash, only to reappear in her apartment. Naruto placed her on the couch and then sat down beside her. She gazed up at him with those large blue eyes that made his heart skip a beat. She flushed before pressing her head against his chest as his arms encircled her waist and drew her in close, causing his breathing to slightly increase. As they held each other close, a million thoughts were racing through their minds. Naruko was filled with dread and realized that this mission would not be simple at all. Naruko said quietly, "Can I see your face before you go?" And Naruto laughed. Naruto teasingly said, "Sorry Naruko, protocol, plus I thought you were so confident in my abilities." Naruko smiled a little more and nodded before falling asleep in his arms like it was just another night. It had become a habit that Naruto hated to violate. Sighing, Naruto lifted her and carried her to the bed. After setting her down, he slipped into the bed and put his arms around her, drawing her close and eliciting a grateful mew. Naruto then reviewed his fictitious death plan and questioned whether it was worthwhile because she was content in this state and he truly wanted her to be content. What's wrong with me? I know from experience that relationships never work out for me. Mei, Samui, Hinata, and I could go on and on about how late they all discovered that. However, he thought, I already have the evidence I need, as he closed his fist and looked down at his hand before unwinding and falling asleep. On the other hand, Naruko was reviewing her own ideas as well, primarily wondering why he was feeling so anxious about that mission. She simply ignored it and smiled while she slept, embracing Naruto's warm embrace. After waking up alone in her bed and fearing she was running late, Naruko put on a big t-shirt that only covered her thighs and went into the kitchen to find Naruto standing at the sink with a carton of eggs by his side. As he gave Naruko a plate of eggs and a piece of bacon, Naruto turned to smile at her. Naruto took his own plate and sat down opposite her, saying, "Better than ramen for breakfast, I know that firsthand." As she finished her breakfast, Naruto grinned and said, "Good luck today, hope you pass." She grinned back before rushing out the door to meet her friends. Naturally, she passed with Kei's assistance. It was a very clever strategy. It appeared to be just shadow clones as they all hanged into Naruko and attacked in different patterns. However, when he tried to dispel one with a knife, he stabbed Naruto, which caused the henge to dispel. Naruto was obviously planning this, so when Kakashi's guard was dropped, Sasuke swooped in with his amazing speed and grabbed the bells, while Naruto grabbed Kakashi's hand and gave him a quick kick in the nuts. Naturally, the wound had healed by the time Kakashi looked at it. Without questioning it, Kakashi told them to report for their first mission as Team 7 at 9 tomorrow. Sasuke and Kei's followed him, and they quickly became friends. In the 3 weeks that followed, she and Kei's became very close, and it made her blush a little because he always made her feel better when Fox was away. As she read a scroll Kei's had given her from Kakashi, she reflected on all of this while lounging on her couch. It provided instructions for tree walking, which she would attempt after she had cleaned up a little. She was thinking when the door knocked, so she smiled, assuming it was Kei's coming over to lend a hand. He said he would today, and the thought warmed her up. She approached the door and opened it to reveal a messenger holding a scroll, a few random objects, and the object that made her heart skip a beat and her eyes well up with tears. A fox mask with a crack on top and bloodstains on the side. She reached for the mask and blinked frantically, hoping it was only a terrible nightmare, but the mask, the blood, the crack, the pain in her body, the messenger olivite never disappeared. Went. Go. Her tears streamed down her cheeks and she fell to her knees in a moment. She hurriedly gathered the other items and entered the house, glancing down at the scroll that read, "To Naru." She opened the scroll quickly to see what was written on it. "Dear Naruko. Hello, Naru. If you're reading this, then I'm dead. Well, I get to see my parents and friends now, so it's not all bad. I'll tell your parents how strong and beautiful you've grown, and I hope they'll be proud of you when I tell them. I left you everything I owned because I thought of you as a sister and I hope you thought of me as your brother. Kei's is a nice guy, but if he does anything to harm my sister, I'll come back and kill him. Naruko. I hope all is well with you. Please try to fulfill my last request and avoid becoming enmeshed in hateful pursuit of my murderer, as someone as attractive as you should never be an Avenger. I suppose I should see you later. I'm probably playing golf with Cami right now, and we're talking about the most beautiful blonde woman on the planet. Death isn't all that horrible. For the unlucky, it's like retirement. Goodbye, Naruko, and have a long and happy life. Sincerely, Fox. Naruko looked at the few objects in the stack and dried her tears as she nodded to the scroll when it said to honor his memory. She couldn't help but laugh when she saw a picture of Team 7 with a fox in the background, giving Kakashi and Naruko bunny ears, on top of a few weapons, trinkets, and other items. Naruko turned the mask over, wondering what it would be like to wear one, and she gasped when she saw the pictures and memories taped to it. She couldn't help but laugh at Ichiraku's jokes or just sit and enjoy the sunset. One of her favorite moments was when she was taking a bath and moaned, fearing that he would enter thinking she was in danger and would face the wrath of a woman. She covered herself and punched him in the face, screaming to get out. She started crying again as she looked at the photos until she noticed a corner of one that was covered. She pulled it out and her eyes widened as she saw that it was a picture of them sleeping together, with her eyes closed and a smile on her face as he pressed his lips to her cheek. Naruto was safe, so he wore a henge, but his eyes were bright, and you couldn't really tell much from the picture because of how dark it is, but his face was visible. The only stain on his body was the scar. To the right was writing. Hey Naru, did you finally get my face? In the corner, a chibi Anbu with a smiling mask on its face held up a peace sign. She held the picture close as Naruto made a sound that sounded like a snort, laugh, and cry all at once. When she heard Kei's knock on the door, she said, "I will honor your memory, Fox." She shouted, "Be right there," before putting the mask down and looking at it as she made her way to the door. "I'm grateful for everything." As Naruto-kun turned the doorknob, a flash of light appeared in her eyes, indicating that she was more knowledgeable than she appeared to be. Lost in her own thoughts, Naruko sat quietly with Kei's and Sasuke. She was aware that her strength was increasing. Kakashi Sensei gave her and Kei's some scrolls, and they were learning a lot from them. She was able to speed up this process even further because of her expertise with shadow clones, which allowed her to expand her knowledge to new levels. She was learning as quickly as she was, if not faster, than Kei's, who has a similar affinity for the technique. Naruko felt so far behind, despite the fact that this made her work even harder to catch up to her fellow blonde. He appeared to be holding back during their spar, which slightly infuriated her. Nevertheless, he was a kind man who supported her following Fox's passing. Once, she had let him sleep with her due to various nightmares, and when she woke up screaming, all he did was comfort her by stroking her hair. Naruko made sure he knew how much he appreciated his assistance, despite the fact that it left him feeling exhausted the following day. She happened to become aware of him. Naruko occasionally observed the odd glances Kei's would give her, such as when she would remove her sweatshirt after a brief bout of sparring and he would blush and turn away as she turned to face him. This struck the blonde girl as strange, and she started to look at him. She wondered where he got the scars that littered his muscular body, which was covered in strange markings. Naruto, meanwhile, was struggling to look away from Naruko. He found her growing body attractive in a way that no other woman could, and this made him extremely irritated. Something changed him the day after he kissed her forehead while she was sleeping, even though he still wanted to treat her like a sister. Not doing so seemed odd, like some kind of compulsion that he was unable to explain. Leaning against a post, the blonde ninja sighed and looked at Naruko, then quickly to another spot when their eyes locked. Naruko followed suit. With a lopsided smirk, Sasuke looked at Kei's and Naruko and thought, "Who would have thought?" Sasuke laughed in amusement after witnessing the recent exchanges. As their sensei Kakashi arrived, a whirl of leaves filled the room. Normally, Naruto would have thrown a kunai at him, but he chose to spare his life in honor of his master, his friend. When Kakashi said, "All right team, ready for a new mission," everyone said, "Hi," got up, and followed their sensei. As he walked, Naruto was lost in thought, wondering how he was going to convince Haku and Zabuza of his identity. Which, given that he had the 7 swords of the mist sealed in his thigh, wasn't too difficult. A dying messenger showed up bearing Mei's final request for them after the mist that resulted from the fall of cloud and sand was destroyed. In response to her request, Naruto humbly accepted the blades and made a silent promise to use his senseis and old friends to make a difference. With his hands in his pockets, Naruto gazed up at the sky and took a step to the right to avoid a pull. Shikamaru was right when he said that there were days when Naruto wished he were a cloud that could just float around worry-free. The entire damn world seemed to rest on his shoulders, which was somewhat futuristic. Kakashi was also taking Obito's death much more easily than he had anticipated, and naturally, he was spending practically all of his free time creating a mind-blocking seal to prevent Madara from influencing Obito. They would have a strong ally if it succeeded. However, it was only temporary until he was able to replace Madara's cells with some of Obito's thanks to Tsunade's assistance. After all, Obito held the secret to everything. If it hadn't already happened, Naruto only had to stop those cells before they fully fused with him. If so, his method of the ultimate maelstrom was their only chance to stop Madara. Naruto observed as Naruko enthusiastically discussed a new scroll with her sensei. Since she learned by doing rather than by reading, he demonstrated how it was done, and she threw herself into it, sometimes failing to grasp the precise method and developing her own in the process. Unconsciously, Naruto's gaze dipped and then shot back up into the sky as his face flushed. Naruto, serious things, serious things. To distract himself from Naruko for the moment, Naruto thought. As the Chunin swore and gave some cash to a smirking Sasuke, Kakashi and Sasuke exchanged glances. Actually, Kakashi was taken aback by Naruto's adamant refusal to mix up with anyone. However, in the end, love was something that was impossible to avoid. Naruto snickered as they saw a team departing to capture the dreaded devil Katora as they reached the Hokage Tower. He was losing his edge, so he was glad to have a little challenge at last. He engaged Kakashi in serious combat during their training sessions in the future, and he typically left the training grounds exhausted and with a severely battered Kakashi. Being a member of the elite, Kakashi was aware that Naruto was superior to both the Sannin and the Kage. Naruto, being Naruto, lifted his foot and yelled, "I got it," just as Kakashi was about to knock on the door, before giving the door a forceful kick that sent it flying into the office. Iruka and the old cage blinked as Naruto entered, wearing his trademark foxy smile. While Kakashi and Sasuke just perspired at his behavior, Naruko was laughing aloud. Iruka screamed, "Kase, fix that damn door." Naruto nodded and then went back to the door to reassemble it. He listened to Naruko argue with the Hokage for a better mission, and he grinned a little when Kakashi made a similar request. Given what Sarutobi and Kakashi knew, it was obviously a ploy. Sarutobi sighed and gave in to Naruto's demand that they receive a C rank. He gave Kakashi a scroll that he was holding out. The door opened as he said, "Your mission is to escort a bridge builder to Wave. His name is Tazuna." The man was standing there holding a bottle of sake and was about to say something when his bottle broke and Naruto was spinning a kunai on his finger. Naruto grinned and said, "I'm sure we are more than enough for whatever Gato can dish out." The man went a shade lighter. They all nodded and filed out the door to collect their supplies and equipment. "Okay team. Pack for at least a week and a half and meet at the northern gate in 2 hours." Naruto and Naruko left together to gather their belongings, while Sasuke rushed to the Uchiha district. They would attempt to steal glances at one another, but they were caught because they were doing it simultaneously, which made it awkward. When Naruto finally had enough, he coughed into his hand while gazing up at the sky. Naruto inquired, "So, how are you feeling since Fox?" Tragically, Naruko sighed. "Okay. I guess. He was a good guy, but he only thought of me as a sister. Guess he thought because of his identity he guessed we couldn't be together," Naruko replied. There was a brief pause before she turned to find Naruto gone. He was frozen in mid-step behind her, his face as pale as if he had just seen a ghost, when she turned around. Naruko waved her hand before his eyes and said, Kase, you okay?" He coughed and shook his head to clear it. Naruto said, Yeah. You knew what his identity was?" And Naruko gave a nod. "I overheard him explaining to the old man. I can tell now why he knew I would turn into such an awesome ninja." Naruko laughed out loud. She was able to steal glances at Naruto with a flushed face because he seemed to be out of it for the remainder of the walk. When Naruto finally reached her house, he smiled and opened the door for her, to which she returned the favor by entering. Having already packed everything into his seals, he waited for her outside. He only had a few clothes, some ramen, and a picture of the new Team 7 in his home. Since he was technically the most qualified to protect them, he kept everything else with him, including his food, clothing, and armory of kunai and shuriken. He even kept the secret jutsu from the future village. Before he began learning them a few weeks ago, he never touched them and everyone trusted him. Either way, he was going to be prepared. Just as Naruko opened her door, a look of surprise on her face at his presence, Naruto unlocked a backpack and slipped it over his shoulders. Naruto said, "I came to walk with you back," and Naruko was a little let down. Inquiring about Kurenai's experience of liking someone was necessary. Makoto couldn't help but worry that she might be misunderstood because she was on Sasuke's team, and she couldn't ask Anko. The sword lady was kind enough to her, but it was either Kurenai or the Anbu Neko because men were perverts. Naruko sighed after biting her lip as she and Naruto descended the stairs and spoke briefly, primarily about the mission. Naruko was a little annoyed by how simple the old man's mission was. Thinking it was just Kakashi-sensei, she dismissed it with a shrug. With only a few minutes remaining, they arrived at the front gates without seeing the client or the rest of their team. Naruko sat down and started to think, looking around. She wished she had parents and someone to love, even though everything was fine for her. She shook her head, blushing at the last thought. She looked adorable when she pouted, and when she blushed, she seemed to glow. Naruto was observing her closely, and the red tint on her cheeks made him blush as well. He quickly chastised himself for such a thought. He wasn't here to cuddle, he was here to save lives, himself, herself. God, this is confusing. Huh? When Naruto realized he had spoken aloud, his eyes widened and he gave a slightly apprehensive laugh. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly and said, Nothing, just trying to figure out something." With a simple shrug, Naruko returned to her thoughts. After a few awkward minutes of silence, Sasuke approached them from a side street, which caused Naruto to reflect on all the things he had changed. A smiling prodigy, Sasuke spent nearly all of his time trying to outdo his brother, but he also spent a lot of time with the two blondes. The Uchiha pride was gradually being eroded, leaving an honorable man in its stead, since his father had passed away and his mother was now in charge. Soon after, Tazuna and Kakashi showed up, the latter of whom was visibly intoxicated based on his slight sway. With a small sigh, Naruto pivoted on his heel and began the mission, with the others following shortly after. It was strange to feel like Naruto was in charge because he had completed this mission before, but he was sure that he would save the two this time. Naruto smirked slightly and almost skipped down the road as they passed the same puddle. They had barely passed it when chains came down from the tree line, encircling Kakashi tightly before tearing him to shreds. Two men quickly ran in the direction of the genin. Grinning, Naruto swiftly took both of their hands, broke them, and kicked them in the stomach, sending them flying into the trees. Naruto sighed as he struggled to get back up after cracking his neck and approaching the fallen men. He hadn't kicked with that much force. After picking them up, Naruto slung them into a different tree, flinging two kunai with ninja wire attached to them that held them firmly to the tree. They posed little of a problem. However, Naruto glanced at his hands, where a tiny cut was healing more quickly than usual. He sighed as he began to kill off the poison that had flooded his system. As he saw Kakashi questioning one of the men, Naruto thought, "I'm losing my edge. Hopefully Zabuza will give me a challenge." He moaned a little. If he had Kyuubi's regular chakra, it would be so much simpler. Just put a bunch in his fingernail, scratch one, and watch as he crumbles and the other reveals the truth. As though his sensei was in dire need of it, after he had finished questioning them, Kakashi turned on Tazuna, who quickly revealed his deceit and concocted a story Naruto already knew. Kakashi was merely acting for show. While he smiled and Kakashi stayed, shocked expressions came on Naruko and Sasuke's faces. Since you could only see his eye and not the rest of his face, stoic would be the best description. "Well, only thing we can do now is continue, right guys?" replied Naruto. After some consideration, both Naruko and Sasuke nodded, which prompted Tazuna to thank him tearfully in return. Naruto grinned before continuing with the other people. Before long, they were traversing the water, and the massive bridge towered over them. Naruko was about to exclaim how enormous the object was when Naruto abruptly stopped her speech by covering her mouth with his hand. He put a finger to his lips and withdrew his hands when she stopped struggling, signaling her to keep quiet. Naruto stated, with a hint of what was about to happen, "Shinobi must always be silent when going into enemy territory." He then turned his head and watched as the shore came into view. He extended his chakra sensing as Naruto and the others arrived, and he was pleased to discover the chakra signatures of Haku and Zabuza. With a small smile, he looked at Kakashi, who gave him a brief nod in return, and continued on in a different direction. Concerned for her teammate, who had created clones and had them hinge into his team and Tazuna, Naruko questioned, "Kakashi. Sensei, why is Kase going that way?" When Naruto entered the forest, Kakashi clarified, "He's just doing a little recon. He'll be back with us in a bit." Naruto briefly put a hand on his head once they were out of sight before deciding to win Zabuza over without disclosing anything. Not yet. He may eventually divulge the information to everyone. Apart from that, only those who were present during the times he thought necessary were permitted to know. He soon sensed the rabbit's presence and, just like before, threw a kunai, grazing its back and frightening it into submission. While Sasuke watched apathetically, Naruko swiftly seized the bunny and cursed Naruto. After taking a quick look around, Kakashi yelled for everyone to get down. Everyone ducked except Naruto, who slung the heavy sword onto his back after holding out his hand and the handle landing just inside it. He held on tightly to it, only moving an inch or so from the recoil. He said, "Come on out Zabuza, I have a proposition for you." His team and client vanished into thin air. After waiting for a few minutes, Naruto heard rustling and Zabuza appeared with a punch poised to strike his face. "First, I know why you left Kiri. Good intentions don't get you anywhere, huh? Second, I know your friend with the ice bloodline is here. Third, you can be free from hunter nins and be a kenjutsu teacher for people, as well as I will help you with the Mizukage. I know where his problem lies and I will tell you if you come out." Sadly for him, Naruto vanished as quickly and reappeared behind him, the big blade aimed at the man's back. "Alright kid, you got my attention. What exactly is wrong with him?" Naruto handed Zabuza his sword back and said, "He is being controlled by a man with the Sharingan against his will." As he leapt back to avoid the blade's swipe, Naruto grinned and said, "I know you won't come without either having something worth coming for. The person earns your respect, or both, so I will do both." Zabuza asked, "Oh, and how will you do that?" As Naruto straightened up and yawned, a little ticking off Zabuza, which Naruto had discovered was one of his talents a long time ago. Zabuza raised an imaginary eyebrow in response to Naruto's statement, "Win in a battle against you and Haku." "How do you know her name?" Naruto grinned and held up a kunai he had thrown into the air, saying, "I know a lot of things." In all honesty, He was using the Hiroshin kunai he kept on hand as a backup in case things got messy. The kunai fell to the ground, and Haku stood next to Zabuza as a whirlpool of water emerged. As the tip got closer, Naruto smiled and threw 3 more kunais into the air while displaying some hand signals. Mutli Shadow Kunai Jutsu. The kunai fell onto the field after turning from 3 to 300. After avoiding a slash from Zabuza, Naruto easily dodged a series of senbons thrown by the 2X. Missed ninjas in response. He grinned with excitement at finding a suitable match at last. For a few moments, Naruto stayed on the defensive and started dodging before appearing to bend away. Shortly after, Zabuza experienced an ache in his back as Naruto's Rasengan sent him spinning in a circle toward the trees, leaving a spiral mark on his back. Until he heard Zabuza scream. The blonde watched it turn into water and escaped another slash and senbon barrage. Water style. Hidden mist jutsu. As soon as the mist filled the room, Naruto closed his eyes and focused, using the rest of his senses to avoid the ice spike that forced him to land in a dome of mirrors and downward sword slashes. Naruto grinned as he avoided nearly innumerable ice senbon, recalling his first C rank turn A rank. Secret technique, demonic ice mirrors. Naruto snarled in frustration as the senbon began to strike him, and then he was suddenly covered in golden chakra, with black lines flowing over his body. Haku was sent flying through a mirror and then through multiple trees after Naruto swiftly punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in agony. Then he vanished and reappeared behind Zabuza, delivering a much larger Rasengan straight onto the man's spine, knocking him unconscious and sending him flying into a tree. Naruto let go of his chakra and collapsed to one knee after the battle was over. During the battle, Haku had been able to nick a number of his nerve points. He was not much of a threat, but when he slowly stood up rigidly, he still winced. He took hold of Zabuza and proceeded to rescue Haku from a crater before heading to Tazuna's residence. The lights were on when he got there, so he knew that everyone had already gone inside. He pushed the door open and fell quickly, putting on a little show, though part of it was real because his legs were going to give out from the senbon. When he looked up, he saw that everyone was staring at him with wide eyes. He gave them a weary smile before he collapsed next to Zabuza and Haku. Kaze. As he turned to face the slightly shaky Naruko, he heard a female scream and laughed wearily. With a foxy smile, Naruto said, "Hey der." He then stumbled to his feet and approached the couch. He grabbed a mirror and gasped, wondering why everyone was staring at him. He was the epitome of a pincushion. He must have been struck more times than he had estimated. Tsunami became a little queasy as Naruto began extracting the needles and letting them fall to the ground, all of them partially covered in blood, while Inari gazed at him in wonder. After finishing, he yawned a little and leaned back before lying down. Kakashi nodded before Naruto swiftly dozed off. "Tell our guests to wait upstairs for me when they wake up." After several hours, Naruto felt a weight on his body and opened his eyes. Naruto laughed a little when he looked down and saw Naruko leaning on him while seated in a chair, sound asleep and practically drooling. Naruto sighed and grinned down at her before placing a hand on her head and shaking her slightly. Her eyes opened slightly as she looked up at the grinning Naruto, causing Naruko to gasp and then jump up and give him a hug, choking him a little. Naruto rasped, "Naruko, choky not breathy." Naruko blushed and turned her head away, letting go. Naruto teased, then laughed, "Ah, was little Naruko worried about me?" As Naruko's head nearly burst in red before she cocked her fist back and delivered a powerful blow straight to his face, sending him crashing into the wall. After letting out a small groan, Naruto dropped to his knees, made a show of being hurt, and then got to his feet while laughing. Naruto smiled and asked, "So where is Zobi, Chan and Haku?" Naruko gestured to the upstairs, nodded, and then walked up the stairs, leaving a still-red Naruko sitting on the couch. The first door was knocked on as Naruto ascended the stairs. After hearing a gruff enter, he went inside to find Zabuza wearing bandages around his torso. Haku was reading a book off to the side, and Naruto gave him a small smile before shutting the door and applying a seal that caused the room to flash blue. He then took a seat in a nearby chair. "So any questions? I want to know where it is you say we will be safe, and who is responsible for controlling Yugura." "Well, first off you will be headed to Konoha if you follow me. Haku will be safe and even treated as a princess. Bloodlines are coveted there. And your Kenjutsu will also be wanted to help strength for forces," Naruto stated before taking a deep breath. Haku and Zabuza nodded, and Naruto closed his eyes as he said, "Now, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, ever, got it?" The one who is controlling the Mizukage goes by the name of Tobi or Madara, but his true name is Obito. He was partly crushed by a boulder where somehow Madara saved him, placed his own cells into the boy and having them mess with his mind, turning him insane and wanting world peace by bouncing a genjutsu off of the moon onto the planet, thus making everyone his slaves. I have no real idea why he took control of Yugura. Maybe it was to help destroy the Uzumaki clan, who knows. All I know is that he needs to be stopped. Naruto sighed. One way or another. Zabuza and Haku sat there in shock. They never knew that someone could be so demented. After releasing the seal and getting to his feet, Naruto opened the door and descended the stairs. Slumping back in the chair, Naruto sighed. Observing that Sasuke and Naruko had disappeared, he surmised that Kakashi was instructing them in tree climbing. After briefly closing his eyes, Naruto got up and entered the town. A chair and a stand materialized in the town square, and Naruto sat down behind them. A kid with a rather scruffy appearance approached him and pulled on his arm. "Mister, what are you doing?" In a puff of smoke, Naruto pulled out a box and handed it to the boy, who thanked him with a joyful smile and left to tell his friends, giving away food, that's what. People began to line up, and Naruto would give each villager a box of food. He didn't have to worry about running out because he had an entire armory full of food in that one seal. Everyone learned during the war to stockpile food whenever possible because you never knew how long you would be without it. About 2 hours had passed before he had finished serving the food, and he grinned as he packed up the stand and left, receiving nods of gratitude from every villager. As he went by a number of people who said hello and thank you, he grinned to himself. Knowing where Naruko would be, Naruto ventured into the forest. As he sat by a tree and watched Naruko examine a leaf, he felt a chakra signature spike that was exactly like his own, and he grinned. She grunted in rage as she threw the leaf away when Naruto smiled at her as he walked out. Something wrong? She glared at Naruto as he laughed a little, and he smiled back before drawing out a scroll. I was trying to combine the tree walking and leaf balancing, but it was hard and I hid my head. Naruto threw her a scroll with a swirl on it after saying, "I think it's time for you to learn this." She read aloud from it after opening it. As Naruko exclaimed, "This technique is called the Rasengan, a very powerful close-range technique made by the 4HT Hokage himself." Naruto pulled out some water balloons and watched with a smile as she automatically created clones and had them begin working on the first part. After observing her for a good hour, she snorted at him and placed a hand on her hips, causing Naruto's eyes to gently follow her up her body. "How come you're not training?" Just by holding out his hand, Naruto caused a blue ball of energy to materialize, causing her to close her eyes and snarl in frustration before returning to her work. Naruto observed her while she worked, taking in the movements of her body each time she extended her hand, perspiration streaming from her head due to the excessive use of chakra. Leaning back against the tree and placing his arms behind his head, Naruto stretched and gave a small yawn. Naruko growled as Naruto cheekily remarked, "Watching you train so much is making me tired." Naruto then ran and jumped into his lap, causing him to gasp for air. He grunted and flipped him off of him, squealing in response to Naruko's giggles and nose flicks. Naruto chuckled before tutting and avoiding a blow. Naruto avoided a kick and emerged behind the girl, causing her to stiffen as he whispered in her ear, Now Naruko. Chan, ladies shouldn't have such violent habits." Before rushing off in the other direction, Naruto teased, "Especially one such as beautiful as yourself." He assumed he was being followed, but when he turned around, Naruko was motionless, so he tilted his head slightly and started to back away. He turned to face her and noticed that she was blushing profusely while gazing into space. She exploded in smoke just as Naruto was ready to leave, and a fist landed squarely in his nose, sending him hurtling into a tree. With a loud crack, he popped his nose into place and looked up to see Naruko standing there, flushed from reliving the memories of the clones. She merely said, "Pervert." Then, with a flip of her hair, she turned and left Naruto standing up, laughing. "She punches like Tsunade, damn it." As memories flashed through his mind, making him wince a little, Naruto shook his head and then smiled as he followed her. After a week, Naruko finished the first step of the Rasengan, while Sasuke finished the tree walking and was working on the water walking. Together with Zabuza, Haku, Sasuke, and Kakashi, Naruto was observing the bridge. As his clones assisted in building the bridge, Naruto sighed and leaned back against the railing. While two waited for Gado's army at the end of the bridge, it wasn't particularly difficult. After Naruko finished her speech, Naruto's hanged clone inside the house went off, and he grinned a little. This was followed by a flashback of memories. The ninja tensed a little when Naruto made a signal. While Kakashi was aware of what was about to happen, the others were not as aware. All they knew was that when there was trouble, Naruto would signal them, and his clones would signal him. Naruto quickly created a mist at the bridge's end to give them the impression that they were ahead. Following that, Sasuke, Haku, Zabuza, and Kakashi prepared to use some of their strongest moves against their adversaries. Gato and his army of thugs were standing there when the mist lifted. Their eyes widened at the sight of 2 water dragons, an ice dragon, a fireball, and rippling wind. Before they were torn, burned, or blasted to pieces, that was all they saw. After much torment from Haku and Zabuza, they eventually obtained his bank account, where he keeps his actions, property, and everything else. Naruto's remarkable speed had saved Gato, but his money was later returned to Wave. For the sea turned. A rank mission, everything went to Wave with a tiny portion. When Naruko arrived and complained about missing the action, Naruto tutted, telling her that she shouldn't have slept it. Naruto grinned to himself as he cleaned up the mess, helping with the remaining bodies and bridge work. Soon after, a sizable group of people seemed to assist in the conflict. When they realized they could only assist the bridge, they were taken aback. Even though his eyes were on Inari's bust, Naruko blushed profusely as he approached her, ruffled his hat, and expressed her pride in him for putting everything together. Naruto's eyes met Naruko's, who was still grinning, and he snarled at the boy. As his clones applied the final touches to the bridge, which wasn't much to 300 of the blonde, and Naruto yawned and shook his head, overcoming his protectiveness. From a distance, Naruto observed Naruko chatting with the others while occasionally adjusting her hair. After a while, Naruto shook his head in an attempt to suppress his developing feelings for the girl, but his desire to shield her from everything had grown as a result of nearly living with her and being so close to her for so long. He looked up at the sky with a heavy sigh. With a sigh, Naruto turned to face Naruko, and the two of them locked eyes for a minute. One thing is for sure, I need to find Obito soon, and the best place to start is Kiri. As he gazed intently into her blue eyes and a red flush spread across both her cheeks and his, Naruto thought, time is not on my side. If I'm going to protect the world, my precious people, and my Naruko, I need to act soon. My Naruko. Chan Naruto practically skipped down the street while whistling a cheerful tune. Gato assumed that Haku and Zabuza were still fighting for him because they had completely destroyed the thugs who attacked. The fighters essentially tore the army to pieces, so he didn't last long. The construction of the bridge proceeded without incident after that. However, Naruto has made an effort to avoid looking at Naruko lately. For now, he had to maintain his professionalism. Right now, there were too many lives at risk to consider the girl. However, her vivacious demeanor made it difficult not to. Kakashi and Zabuza were standing next to him, discussing in silence how they were going to get to Kiri. Since the Hokage knew what was going to happen and would stop at nothing, it wasn't really a problem. After the massacre, he quickly disbanded Root. He only needed evidence. Given his track record in this area, Naruto hoped he arrived in time to spare Nagato. Naruko walked slowly next to the Jonin, and Naruto watched him speak to Sasuke and Haku from a distance. He looked at Kakashi, who was reading his smut, which Naruto eventually came to respect due to the passing of his master. He faced Zabuza, who was already reading a book as well. After shaking his head and perspiring, Naruto approached the genin from behind to listen to their conversation. The technique is called the Rasengan. I have only mastered the first step, but Naruto says I could get it within the month if I find the hidden edge. The girl jumped when Naruto said, that's right, you just have to look right and left to do it. He laughed. Don't startle me like that. Naruto laughed and said, it's fun, before he ducked a punch. Kakashi waved at them before returning to his book, occasionally giggling, after Naruto said, anyway, it took the 4th Hokage 4 years to create and master this technique. Kakashi over there knows it as well. Haku said softly, sounds like a formidable technique, and Naruto gave a nod. With Gurren and Kabuto in mind, Naruto remarked, if people don't have a special guard or have a high healing ability, it's an instant knockout. Naruto began to laugh as he sidestepped another blow from the flushed blonde in front of him. Even though it isn't finished, it needs elemental manipulation first, and I bet the pretty little blonde here can get that done. So stubborn she will never back down. As he leaned his head back and gazed up at the sky as a number of birds flew by, Naruto remarked, while the Hokage wanted it with lightning manipulation, wind manipulation by far is the most powerful because of it being a battle element. Sure, lightning could make it faster and maybe pierce the target without much trouble, but wind is the best. Haku thought aloud, sounds like an S-rank jutsu if it's finished. Naruto laughed. S. Rank and SS. Rank, it usually comes with 2 parts. What's the difference? Well, I theorize that the first level, the S rank, will have to be smacked into the person much like a regular Rasengan, but its shape would change to a giant shuriken. When hit, it would send the person flying into the sky, then an explosion would happen with the person in the center and thousands of wind blades would attack the person's chakra system and body. If someone survived that, they would be paralyzed and would never be a ninja again. Naruto said with a grin on his face. The second one, the SS rank, would be the same except slightly bigger. With better chakra control comes better jutsu, right Haku? Anyways, the difference with this one would be that it could be thrown. The condensed chakra would fly into its target, expand and literally tear the person to pieces at the cellular level. Then it would grow into a large dome, random blades of wind would erupt from it cutting anyone close by, then it would finish with a large explosion. Naruto finished and glanced around to observe the astonished. Naruto asks inquisitively, "What?" With wide eyes, Haku asked, "Can a jutsu like that actually exist?" And he nodded. Naruto laughed and looked up at the sky once more before turning to face him. All it takes is a little determination, and a lot of chakra. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he said, "And I think she's the one to do it, because I believe in her." With a oof sound, he grinned at her while Naruto gave him a tight hug. He put a hand on her head and smiled gently down at her. Like him at her age, he knew she wanted to be taken seriously. With a eep coming from her, he lifted her and they walked on. Naruto shouted, "There it is everyone! The gates of Konoha!" And Naruto gave a little squeal before he started to run at a typical Chunin's pace. The noises Naruto had been making lately made him laugh. It was adorable and somewhat lovely. After skidding to a halt in front of the gates, Naruto turned to see individuals rushing to catch up with the specks along the horizon. After being flung into a wall, Naruto turned to face a fist that swiftly caused him to drop the girl. "Did I overdo it a bit?" he asked. Before leaving him in the crater, Naruto brushed her hair straight and complained about blonde fools. With a slight smile on his face, Naruto got up and watched her leave, laughing a little as he got himself together. Grinning, Naruto exclaimed, "Okay, then, next person to talk to is Jiraiya," and ran off to the Hokage tower. He laughed when he saw the elderly man scowling at his documents after jumping through the window. Hiruzen chuckled as Naruto's shout, "Hey, old man, I need a favor," startled him a little. "What can I do you for, Naru? I mean K's." The old man nodded when Naruto said, "I need you to tell me immediately when Pervy Sage gets here. I need to see him again." Naruto nodded slightly and said, "He should be arriving in a few weeks, for the Chunin exams." "Okay then, after the Chunin exams I wish to go on a mission with Zabuza, a new ninja I have brought here. A Rouge Sword of the Seven, if you know what I mean. I need to go to Kiri to hopefully put a stop to the mess on the future. I would have to go into the rebels and it may take years to accomplish, but it has to be done. With Obito out there control the Mizuki causing so much bloodshed already, it needs to be stopped." Naruto growled with rage, and in the eyes of the third he saw a raged Minato in him. Naruto nodded slightly and sighed as he studied the pictures on the wall, primarily the final one of the fourth Hokage. "Okay, I will grant you access to this mission. It will be an S-rank blacklist mission 5 months after the Chunin exams. That way you can say goodbye to your friends, get ready, and give me enough time to find a few Anbu or Jonin who would like to join you. You would have to tell them the truth though, gain their trust if any join." Naruto looked into Minato's blue eyes and said softly, "You think Dad would be proud of what I have done so far?" After a while, Naruto nodded and leapt onto the windowsill, saying, "Yes, I think he would be very proud of you." Naruto exclaimed, "CYA sometime in the future," and leapt from the room to assist Naruto with his training. 2 weeks later, the 3 genin were on their way to the ramen stand to grab a bite to eat after receiving their Chunin enrollment papers when they noticed a square rock in the middle of the road. Naruto laughed and said, "Well, it looks like Konohamaru wants to play ninja." Naruko sighed and shook her head. The square rock was turned over, and a huge cloud of smoke emerged as Naruko remarked, "Konohamaru, you aren't hiding very well." Naruto had to laugh when he heard coughing and muttering about too much smoke coming from inside. It was exactly as it had been in the past. As the Konohamaru Corps discussed playing ninja with Naruko, Naruto grinned a little. They soon persuaded her as well, and he laughed as they took off, fully aware of what was about to happen. He walked casually in the opposite direction after hearing curses as they turned a corner. "Where are you, Gaara?" Naruto asked himself as he expanded his senses to the point where he could perfectly sense other people's chakras. He learned how to use one of the Uzumaki bloodlines from Karen. 3 Uzumaki bloodlines were discovered. Typically, all of them received them, but occasionally, only 1 or 2 did. Such as Nagato, for example. Although there were actually 4 if you included the Rinnegan, it wasn't regarded as one because it was given to only one person, aside from the sage. According to his mother's notes, he was able to master the 3 bloodlines, which were light blue chakra chains. Their renowned senses came in second, and their lack of a bloodline was the third. It was their long lifespan and enormous reserves. The Namikaze bloodline was regarded as useless because it wasn't regarded as a bloodline. It only mutated other bloodlines if the two clan members had a child. However, he and Naruko were unique. The Uzumaki were able to sense emotions and feelings at the time because of a mutation that made their senses stronger and more varied. Only a slight alteration was made to the chakra chains, but it was sufficient to pose a serious danger. At the end, weapons could take the shape of battle axes, swords, flails, or anything else. Although the color will always remain a light blue, Naruto went one step further and used it essentially as a puppet, creating humans or animals at the end and luring the person in. This made using a henge with a clone easier. When Naruto's senses detected a person with a regular chakra but a dark chakra inside, he grinned a little. Naruto observed a boy with red hair as he crept up behind him. Naruto chased after him as he vanished in the sunshine. As Temari and Kankuro tensed up in response to Gaara's presence, he materialized behind them. In contrast, Naruko was laughing as he watched Naruto make bunny ears behind the boy's head. "You are a shame to the hidden sand, Kankuro. Stop it or ill kill you." Gaara turned to find Naruto smiling. Naruto backpedaled away and shook his finger back and forth as his sand lashed out. Temari went pale, Kankuro twitched, and Gaara. Naruto laughed and said, don't want to ruin our village's treaty, do ya? It would be like, I don't know, attacking our village with an invasion planned. Took no action. Oh, and I can help you out with your sleeping problem. Gaara's eyes widened and Temari's narrowed as Naruto said, merely yawning a little. How do you know about that? Gaara stepped forward as Naruto grinned and said, I know a lot of things, a lot of things. You can help with it, Naruto said politely. Sure can, mother, as you call it won't be able to have much influence on you if you come with me. Gaara nodded, and Naruto began to leave, with Gaara trailing behind. However, the sand didn't like this notion and tried to kill him. After dodging once more, Naruto emerged before Gaara, his fingertips burning. He slammed his hand around Gaara's seal and into his stomach, saying, "Five-pronged seal." Then the sand and sand armor fell to pieces. Gaara was, to put it mildly, shocked when his sand became useless. All right, then, now that the real problem is out of the way, let's go. Putting his arm around the frightened young man and guiding him to a training field, Naruto laughed. Naruto shook his head, looked at the seal, and lifted up the boy's shirt. After breaking his neck and flying through hand signs, Naruto said, whoever made this seal didn't know what they were doing. Suddenly, the world turned light blue as chains appeared to hold down the red head. Uzumaki sealing style. Biju seal repair. Gaara screamed in agony as fire seemed to flow through his body, lava through his veins, and ice packed into his head as Naruto's palm struck the seal. As his chakra held the boy down, Naruto gritted his teeth and watched as the seal started to twist and turn, eventually reforming into a stronger, flawless seal. It took about 30 minutes to complete, and Naruto grinned as he slumped on the ground. The five-pronged seal vanished when he made a hand gesture. When Naruto noticed the boy toppling over and dozing off, he laughed, lifted him, and carried him to the hotel. He eventually located the siblings' chakra. He thought it was strange that they didn't follow him, but he assumed it was because Gaara was capable of taking care of himself. When he knocked on the door, Temari opened it, gave him a fierce look, and then turned to face the sleeping Gaara. As he passed the redhead on, Naruto grinned amiably and said, fixed his seal, Shikaku shouldn't be any trouble now. She appeared visibly shaken. How did yo? Naruto said simply, as I said, I know a lot of things. He then vanished in a wind spiral. He showed up at the Team 7 training area and saw Naruko training. He grinned and pondered whether he appeared that way given his age. As Naruto observed the girl experimenting with various taijutsu techniques, his mind wandered. In actuality, it required significant improvement. He never excelled at taijutsu. In fact, aside from genjutsu, it was one of his worst subjects at the time. Before he started training in Sage mode and learned Frog Kumite, he was a fast, hard type of person. However, he still performed poorly when not in Sage mode, so he switched to the Fox style, which was very effective for him. It was predicated on guile and deceit, which were lacking in him at the time. He picked things up fast and developed a style that, in the right hands, can be very effective. Or, if you consider it, fists. Thus, he taught the method to his. Lately, he was at a loss for words to describe her. She was once his charge, then a friend, and finally, he thought, a kind of sister, but recently. Watching the girl train, Naruto shook his head. One thing is certain. The Chunin exams will be fascinating. I didn't want to make too many changes, but Orochimaru probably won't attend because the Uchiha clan is still alive, but who knows? To distract himself from the blonde below, Naruto thought, I bet I have already messed up a lot of the future. After a while, Naruto yawned and leapt from the tree. He sat under the tree, his gaze following the bobbing blonde. He laughed and ducked to the side as a fist suddenly attempted to strike his face. The clone training went up in smoke, and Naruko pouted a little but continued her attack. Naruto grinned and said, "Sorry Naruko. A clone isn't going to distract me like that." As Naruto caught her punch, flipped over her, and leaned in to put his lips to her ear, Naruko remarked, "We haven't sparred in a while, so I took the lead." With a laugh, Naruto said, well, little Naruko. Chan thinks she can take me." He then backpedaled away from Naruto, who was flushed from the close encounter. With a smile on his face, Naruto assumed his fighting stance, and the two engaged in a barrage of punches, hits, and dodges. As the two put themselves to the test, most would refer to it as a dance. To make the fight more equitable, Naruto had turned his resistance seals onto absurd levels. Naturally, he was still in the lead because of his years of combat experience. They attacked, parried, and blocked each other in unison, which prevented them from taking down Naruko at all. Both of their feet move in unison. Then, as though under a mental command, they both began to use jutsu. Suddenly, a number of shadow clones materialized and began assaulting the others. Rasengan is moving in different directions, trying to outdo the other. But before long, Naruko was breathing just as heavily as Naruto. Then, Naruko was shoved by Naruto's final clone and fell into Naruto's arms. As they gazed into each other's blue pools, their eyes locked and they both blushed slightly. They stood there in each other's arms, blushing, sweating, and panting. If it weren't for their attire. As he looked into the girl's eyes, Naruto muttered, "Well, that was an interesting sparring match." He had begun to grow after experiencing a growth spurt a few weeks prior. He was already a couple of inches taller than the girl. Not wanting the world to see her flushed face, she nodded her head in agreement and buried it in his chest, blushing slightly. Reaching down, Naruto grabbed her chin and raised it so their gazes could meet. As Naruko's eyes half-lidded and their breath quickened, they leaned forward a little. Naruko whispered, half-heartedly, "I think we should get going now," as she came closer to the other blonde. With their heads edging closer and closer until their lips were just an inch apart and their breaths tickling each other's skin, it seemed as though they were drawn to one another. "Naruko Th." As she moved to bridge the distance, Naruko whispered back, "Shut up, idiot," until someone coughed. The blondes blushed intensely and whipped their heads away. After coughing into his hand, Naruto turned to face a laughing Kakashi. "What do you want?" Kakashi waved and said, "Oh, just passing by on the way to the store." Then he turned to leave. Naruto turned to face Naruko, who continued to turn away. IJ. Naruko fled after saying, "Just leave me alone, don't come near me, don't talk to me. I need time to think." Naruto felt heartbroken. He muttered as he glanced at the floor. He turned and walked in the opposite direction, saying, "If that is what you wish." Naruko herself was torn. She really wanted that to occur. She was scared, though. Fearful of his thoughts upon learning about the fox. Fearful of the consequences if he had a change of heart. Fearful that she was merely a demon and that he didn't love her. That kind of disappointment would break her heart. She heard an explosion as she staggered through the forest. Curious, she ventured to another clearing where Hinata, Kiba, and Shino were training, and Kurenai was standing by the field's edge. Kurenai smiled as he turned to face her. Naruko turned her head away and started to walk toward the town, asking, "Hey Naruko, what are you doing here?" Kurenai gave a slight nod in agreement as Naruko said quietly, "No reason, just needed some time to think." As Naruko glowed like a Christmas tree, Kurenai asked with a puzzled smile, "Want to talk about it, or should I say him?" As Kurenai patted the ground and Naruko grudgingly sat down beside her, she thought, just like her mother, always lighting up redder than a tomato. Naruko looked down at her feet and blushed slightly at the direct question, "So who is the lucky guy?" Kurenai nodded once more as Naruko said, barely audible above a whisper, It's K's." She sighed as she watched Naruko, and she was friends with Anko. She also learned to read certain body language. "So you two were about to do something, probably a kiss." Got interrupted, and as a self-defense you pushed him away, fearing that when he finds out about your secret that he will reject you. Am I close? Naruko's head whipped and he just nodded while Kurenai grinned slightly. After the explanation, Naruko nodded and returned to staring at the ground. "I'm best friends with a person a lot like you. You learn quickly to read body language, so you know what went wrong." The two were silent until Naruko abruptly asked, "How do I know what love is?" As she considered Asuma, Kurenai said softly, Love is experienced differently with each person, but for me, I would do anything for the one I love. Give my life even. He sweeps me off my feet when he tries, and the first kiss is usually the greatest. It sends fireworks through your body, and butterflies in your stomach. Naruko nodded after a while. I understand a bit. He makes me feel alive when our eyes meet, butterflies huh? My whole stomach feels like is vibrating when our eyes meet. When he talks it's like my body needs to listen. It's like waves of calm washing over me when he holds me. His warmth, I just need it. I need him close to me but I'm afraid I might have messed up. Kurenai nodded as Hinata evaded Kiba Fang with ease. Naruko turned to the ground and asked, what have you done for him not to love you back? With a sob in her voice, Naruko lamented, I told him to leave me alone and to not come near me. It hasn't even been 5 minutes but I already regret saying it, so much. Isn't it better to him and say you didn't mean it? He strikes me as a boy who does not hold things against people. A tiny tear trickled from the corner of Naruko's eye as she said, I would but he was an orphan just like me. Was his friend, one of his only friends and I know how bad it feels when someone turns their back on you after they said they were friends. With a sigh, Kurenai wrapped the girl in his arm. Just give it a try, he might surprise you. Sitting atop the mountain, Naruto gazed down at the village below, his eyes vacant. Then Naruto closed his eyes and said, why? Why does everyone I love fall to the hands of others or leave me? Kid, women are women, they will all break your heart in the end. What am I supposed to do, Kurama? What I have done for so long, harden your heart to that kind of love. You may love your friends, your parents, your friends but harden your heart to the touch of a woman. Kurama, I don't think I'm capable of that. Never said you had to, I just told you what I do, it's your choice whether you do it or not. The discussion ended there, leaving Naruto to think for himself. Having 9 Biju inside of you, along with years of knowledge, can occasionally be advantageous. With the exception of Shikaku and Isobu, he soon made friends with most of them, even though occasionally they were out for blood. Isobu was more of a Nara and liked to sleep, but Shikaku loved blood and death. When he is awakened, he becomes irate and threatens to kill. He attacked the boy who was with Gurren primarily for that reason. I'm not sure what I should do because our teamwork will suffer if we don't resolve this before the Chunin exams. However, I have to honor her desires. Naruto closed his eyes after watching the sunset. Naruto closed his eyes once more and sat cross-legged, slipping into a half-conscious meditation. I will respect her wishes, even if my heart aches when she walks beside me. Since then, the blondes have avoided one another. Even during training, they went in different directions. Naruko became increasingly anxious about Naruto's reaction to his lack of conversation with her, and Naruto became more and more aware of how his heart hurt as she continued to ignore him and remain silent. With Naruko on Sasuke's other side, acting as a sort of shield as the negative feelings head away from one another, Naruto entered the building beside Sasuke. Sasuke's face was irritated, Naruto's was blank, and Naruko's was dejected. He detested being in this situation. Whatever it was, the two blondes were involved. He grinned a little as memories came flooding back to him as they entered a crowded area. Recollections of arguments with Sasuke over the most trivial matters. Sakura wants to prove herself to Sasuke, and he is showcasing himself. After a while, he stopped liking her, and he wasn't really sure why. They encountered a crowd while they were walking, but Naruto continued on. As Naruto entered team mode, his mood also changed, and he whispered to his teammates, just ignore the sign, it's a genjutsu. He learned a valuable lesson during the war. Put everything personal off the table to avoid endangering both yourself and other people. Naruto took out his paper and ascended the stairs. He pushed through the doorway into the room, walked beside Kakashi, who was waiting, and silently gave him the paper. He grinned a little because he couldn't see Kabuto or the Sound Ninja anywhere. As far as he could tell, there would be no war this time. As his team entered, Naruto silently observed. His eyes darted over Naruko's, and as his gaze locked with hers, he quickly averted his gaze. He felt like someone was watching him, but he knew exactly who it was. He bit his lip as he glanced over the crowd. His heart was haunted by those eyes, and he didn't want to look into them. It was somewhat easier to deal with the fact that every time he fell in love, they died. However, he had to observe the individual, pass by, eat close by, and make eye contact after being rejected. It was easier in some ways and harder in others. Naruto turned to see Sasuke standing behind him and said, "Kase. You have to talk to each other sooner or later, or it will tear everyone apart." He moved to a different area of the room and leaned against the wall after saying, "It depends on her, she told me to stay away, not to talk to her, why should I dishonor her wishes?" As his words replayed in his mind, The pain in his heart grew even more intense. It was more difficult than his fight with Obito to resist talking to her, as much as he wanted to. However, he was complying with her wishes. He had long been known to put other people's wishes ahead of his own, even though it hurt. Alright, listen up, maggots. As Ibiki entered the room, Naruto turned to face him. He saw the teams begin to shake a little as the intent to kill swept over them. This is the first part of the exams. Everyone move to the next room and take a seat. Naruto glanced down at his paper and gave a slight yawn. There was nothing written on it. He could respond to every query, but he preferred to maintain his less than life attitude. He looked at Naruko, who was in fact struggling, and feigned difficulty. He turned away and cursed Kakashi for putting him in this predicament after his heart failed. In an attempt to distract himself from the other blonde, he bit his lip as he reviewed tactics for the upcoming round. He could gather the majority of the scrolls and covertly send out clones. Perhaps he could persuade Naruko to H. He growled to himself and slammed his head against the desk, giving the impression that he was having even more trouble. Damn it, can't keep my head off of her. But at the moment, he was having heart problems. He sighed and looked up, his gaze meeting Naruko's. She was struggling just as much as he was, and she turned to look like some of the other students when she heard the growl and thump. Her heart seemed to stop as their eyes met. Their eyes ensnared the others, unable to let them look away, and an electricity flowed between them. Finally breaking eye contact, Naruto turned away, fascinated by the ground. With a crestfallen expression, Naruko turned away from him and looked down at the paper before her. People were being called out as the minutes passed. The tension between the two blondes was gradually increasing, but no one was aware of it. Sasuke was the only one who knew, and he had been on their team for a long time and did not like the way things were going. He was sick and weary of Kai's supposed nobility, which was nothing more than self-pity. Additionally, Naruko felt the need to protect herself, so she refused to speak to him. After letting out a sigh and shaking his head, he completed his test and turned it over. He had to figure out how to make this right. Alright, that's it. Pencils down and get ready for the final question. When the speech continued, Naruto yawned, saying, yada yada, no Chunin rank for them if they got it wrong. Many people in the room laughed when he snoozed loudly. Something you would like to say, Shrimp? Yes, sir. You see, even if we did get in wrong, which we won't because the 10th question isn't even a question at all, it's just a test to see if you stay here. We can still reach Chunin in another village's Chunin exam. Then again, it's not even your place to stop us, it's the council and Hokage's choice to promote us. So all of you here who are scared you might fail, nothing to be really worried about, Naruto said with a smirk on his face. Ibiki. Many of the children relaxed significantly after realizing the reasoning. And as they got over their nervousness, some even started laughing. He complained, well, I guess since the runt explained it you all pass. Naruto nodded and then raised his fingers. He counted down from 3, 2, 1, and Ibiki watched. Then there was a crash, and Anko, carrying a banner that was hung on the walls, flew into the room. At the entrance, Naruto smirked at Anko's quivering eye and gave a slight yawn. He turned to see Naruko laughing after hearing what sounded like angels ringing bells. Soon after, he turned away and waited for Anko to speak. His thoughts were straying as he observed everything in the wall, aside from the girl in the opposite row. He bit his lip when he sensed her gaze on him. As she watched Naruto closely, evaluating when, where, and how to apologize, Naruko was punishing herself for what she had said to him. Although she shouldn't have snapped like that, her body had developed a natural defense mechanism to protect her from harm. Naruto took off so quickly and it happened so abruptly that she was unable to comment. I'm really sorry. She barely paid attention to what the instructor was saying because her mind was racing. Anko rushed out the window and exclaimed, ND, you better hurry up, immediately. With a sigh, Naruto got to his feet. Standing in front of Sasuke and Naruko, he descended the stairs in a composed manner like everyone else. Distracted by Sasuke and Naruko's whispering, he was formulating a strategy to pass the Chunin second exam. This is getting out of hand. We all know you both like each other, it's plain as the noses on your faces. Whatever happened between you two, get over it. If you don't, it will hamper our teamwork. Plus I really hate being stuck in the middle of things. I want to talk to him but he keeps me at arm's length. It's because you told him to stay away, he respects your wishes to the extreme, I bet it's because he loves you. But no buts, fix the relationship, distractions get ninja killed. I know, it's hard, it's very hard. I want to try but I'm just afraid. Why? There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm afraid he's going to ask why I told him to stay away, because that talk. I'm afraid of how he will treat me afterward. They walked in silence for a short while before Sasuke cleared his throat in an awkward way. I don't quite understand, but if he truly cares for you it wouldn't matter. So, is the reason like, you're pregnant or something? What the hell? Hey, I'm fine with it. No, I am not. Then you are actually a dude? Naruko sighed and folded her arms beneath her chest as Sasuke was punched and sent crashing into the wall. With a smile on his face, Naruto put his fist in his hand and turned around, only to blink and see an enraged Naruko standing behind him. Where's Sasuke? Is in a wall 3 blocks back. Oh. They stood clumsily together. There was silence between them. So, do you have a plan? Yeah. Want to tell me about it? No. Naruko waved his hands in front of him, shook his head, and blinked, appearing somewhat dejected to Naruto. Naruko nodded and turned back to the street behind them, wondering when Sasuke would return. I meant I would prefer talking about it with you and Sasuke. Easier to get both inputs, no? She asked. When she turned around, Naruto was gone, and she asked, Keizai. Where did he go? She saw Sasuke and Naruto fall from a nearby tree after hearing a yelp. Pile driver. Sasuke let out another yelp as Naruto slammed his elbow into him. He picked himself up and began pulling Sasuke along with him. Alright guys, I researched the Chunin exams and for the last few years it's been the same thing. Travel in the forest of death and get the other team's scrolls. Before we start they are going to make us sign death waivers, so if any of us die, which is totally legal to kill, the leaf won't be held accountable. After that we all get 1 scroll for each team, a heaven scroll and an earth scroll. Then when the gates open we dash through into the forest. That's when the fun begins. Animals, insects, shinobi, all these traps are waiting for us. Naruto said as he jumped from roof to roof, stop dragging Sasuke. Here's the plan. Not very tactical, but it gets the job done. Naruko and I will create as many clones as we can without getting exhausted. They will scatter as a team and take as many scrolls as they can. Every 5 minutes I will make a clone and dispel it so the clones will know where we are. The more scrolls we get, the less teams that make it through. Naruto smiled as Sasuke muttered, sounds simple enough, but what about me? Sasuke nodded in agreement, and they soon skidded to a stop in front of the forest of death. You have special eyes, don't you? You will keep point to be lookout, I will bring up the rear. You can see traps, genjutsu, and people easier than I can with the Sharingan. He could see better than those damn Sharingans, so it was obviously a lie, but he chose to boost Sasuke's ego by putting himself between him and Naruko, which wasn't the best idea. Naruko was, but he was unable to express it clearly. As he waited in line, he bit his lip. He was currently waiting in line to receive the papers because he was the group's team leader. He closed his eyes as a sudden wave of nostalgia overcame him. Because of everything that had happened, he hadn't had much time to reflect on his past, which he thought was a good thing. However, occasionally, happy moments like these brought back memories. He grinned slightly as he reflected on his match with Neji, how he defied everything and defeated him in the ground. Good memories mixed with bad memories, bad with good, he said. When he recalled how Neji had survived that explosion to save hundreds of civilians, his smile faltered. Neji had supported him all the way to the end. He pushed the memories away with a grimace. He opened his eyes to find himself pushed forward and without anyone in front of him. After rubbing the back of his head and blushing, he picked up his papers and handed 2 to his teammates. He shrugged and leveled his eyes at them despite their odd looks. What? Naruto sighed and shrugged once more, saying, you just froze up, I have never seen that happen. Naruto whispered, just a bit of memories. He then took their signed documents and gave them back so that the Earth Scroll could be taken. Naturally, he showed it off, being careful to give the impression that he wasn't doing it intentionally. Although they wouldn't last long, he was certain that those with Heaven Scrolls would follow in his footsteps. Before the end of the day, they would have a scroll of heaven. The others nodded in agreement as he whispered the plan into their ears, and they were all assured of their abilities. Naruto and his teammates looked at the competition as each team joined up at their own gate. He only ever had issues with the Rain Group's genjutsu, so it wasn't much to look at. That fight was a lot of trouble, but it was easy enough and ended well. His memories ceased as he leapt through the gates, adrenaline rushing through him as the gates flashed open with a boom. His team followed closely behind him as he zipped through the trees. After undergoing weight training, the other 2 had improved their strength and speed. Although it wasn't much, it was sufficient to stay 1 step ahead of the competition. Sasuke kept ahead of them as they leapt from tree to tree, shielding them from enemies and traps. They intentionally caused dents, cracks, and cuts in the trees in an attempt to draw the teams to them. They would acquire more scrolls and eliminate the majority of the competition the more people there were. Naruto remarked, I think we should stop here for lunch. The hidden meaning of the statement was that a team with a Heaven Scroll was present, and one of his shadow clones was puffing. After Naruto made 2 clonisa, one of whom was dressed as Sasuke, and Naruko made her own. They leapt to the ground and established a makeshift camp. They soon leapt into the trees and waited, but they didn't have to wait long because Naruto's clones were destroyed by a sudden lightning strike from a Kumo team. As the 2 boys approached Naruko, the third teammate, who was most likely a woman, stood apart in disgust and scoffed, saying, "Looks like we caught ourselves a snack." As they stalked in the direction of the other blonde, Naruto's anger was gradually growing. He was beginning to lose patience, even though he knew it was essential. Annoyed. The word, irritated, was incredibly weak to describe how. "I'm annoyed." Perhaps he was furious, but he needed to maintain composure. It was all about timing. The world exploded after one of them suddenly swung out and used a kunai to cut a large portion of Naruko's shirt, exposing a good deal of skin. Naruto stood dangerously calm between the clones and glared at the Kumo ninja after he was sent back with a shockwave. When they saw him, they were shocked. Alive following that lightning strike. When he lifted his fist, a ball appeared around them, and he grinned as it began to contract. To destroy the bubble. Like ball, they fired jutsu after jutsu, but it continued to shrink and gradually enclose him. "Kase, don't," Naruto said, looking at the disgusted clone of Naruko. With a sigh, Naruto yanked his hand, causing the bubble to spin before crashing into a tree, leaving the ninjas affixed to the tree. Naruto approached the struggling genin and seized the scroll. He gave a nod to his teammates, who appeared somewhat pale, and they set out to reach the tower as quickly as possible. What was that technique? He was pushed against a nearby tree, and Naruko was putting a knife to his neck. Sasuke was standing by on guard, but he was just as shocked as Naruto. "Well, I learned it from a friend. He was dead, but we had a special link, along with a few others I made friends with. He taught me his bubble techniques. Not very useful to most, but they have great possibilities." Naruko growled, "And Naruto, you know an awfully lot of things for a kid, the same age as us. Now tell me who you are." Started to laugh. She started a little when he smiled at her and then raised his sleeve to reveal an Anbu tattoo on his shoulder. "Think quickly," Naruto said. "After Fox died, I was assigned to help protect you, you and your tenant." Everything was true, but the word, death, was a little off kilter. He became aware that they had been preparing this intervention for a few days, if not weeks, when he noticed Sasuke observing him with a Sharingan eye. His eyes narrowed and his mouth fell open as the sudden realization struck him so forcefully. He is telling the truth. He clenched his fist and gritted his teeth, saying, "That moment was a lie." Naruko understood what he meant. She was going to deny it and claim that, despite its briefness, she had enjoyed the moment, but Naruto vanished in a flash of speed, leaving a clone to observe the two from a great distance. Even though he didn't tell the truth about himself, Naruto felt deceived, but that didn't mean he had to fabricate something as strong as. He was unsure of how to classify it. Although he had observed her for years, it could have easily been love even though it wasn't on her part. He clenched his teeth and set out to find fresh scrolls, hoping that combat would temporarily ease his anxiety. Naruto had already taken the majority of the scrolls by nightfall, defeating multiple teams before frantically looking for more. He vanished in a red explosion that appeared on the edge of the woods after his clone dispelled, revealing the location of the team. "He's not here, we can't go on without him, it has to be a whole team. Just put the scrolls down and he can come when." Naruto walked right by them, startling them both by yanking the scrolls out of their hands. He threw the scrolls on the ground after opening them and crisscrossing them. A random Chunin emerged as smoke burst from it, and Naruto entered the tower from the outer room. He only needed to go to sleep in order to forget everything. He didn't need to hear anyone talk. He felt his two teammates sprint up behind him, clenching his fists and gritting his teeth as he recalled all that he had done for them, including saving Sasuke's family and caring for Naruko from a baby. He slunk down from a wall, watching the blue orb with dull eyes, and made a Rasengan without thinking, letting it orbit one of his fingers. "Kase, we need to discuss this." He ignored everything the others said, keeping his gaze fixed on the orb. "How old am I? Like 22. I'm acting like a kid." He looked up at them and noticed that their lips were still moving. He got up and began to walk because he needed to think, clear his head, and act more logical than he actually was. But he also required some room. As he slipped around the corner, he muttered, "Give me a couple of minutes." In January, he was acting like molasses while his mind was racing. There were too many back alleys and loops and spins for him to think clearly. He also discovered that he hadn't slept for days. He never understood how Gaara managed to go so long without sleep. A demon in your stomach could do a lot, but you needed to sleep. He slipped past the two quarreling teenagers and went back around the corner to his room, where he collapsed on his bed and fell asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. He sensed motion. He felt movement beside his bed, but he was unsure of how long he had been asleep. Naruko was sitting on the edge of his bed, wiping her eyes, when he glanced at a glass of water next to his bed. As a wartime precaution, he released the kunai that was in his hand but kept it close. He slowed his heart and calmed his breathing, giving the impression that he had woken up and then fallen back asleep. When she realized, she started to sniffle and wipe her eyes, clearly the action that roused him. Then he realized he was wearing a cover, which he had never remembered to wear. From the positions of the stars, he could see that it was almost midnight when he looked out the window. As she held herself, she was mumbling something about apologies and regrets. He turned over and rolled his eyes, which startled her a lot and caused her to topple over. He scooted over, pulled back the covers, and gave her a half-hearted smile. He was aware that she was either feeling guilty about something or that she had had a bad dream. When that occurred, she shared her bed with teddy bears. That was an additional distinction between the two. With a hiccup, she climbed into the bed and turned away from him. Knowing full well that his body would roll over on its own and put its arms around her the following morning, he was content with that and turned over himself to sleep. Indeed, the two blondes were entangled with one another when daylight broke through the window. Naruto awoke and looked into Naruko's wide, open eyes. He blushed as he stared, his pulse accelerated slightly, and he rolled over, biting his lip. After ignoring the tap on his shoulder for a few minutes, he sighed and rolled over, directly into the woman he loved's lips. As he pressed his mouth firmly against hers, his surprise gave way to embarrassment and then desire. The kiss grew more intense and needy as their bodies and animal instincts took over. Their hunger subsided as time went on, and their need grew weaker. As they lay entangled in one another, they were enjoying each other's company and exchanging gentle pecks. Kaze, since you are my protector of sorts and already know about furball, you should know about a problem. One we almost kissed back then. I meant it. I really liked you, but people tend to hurt me because of furball, so as a self. I understand, Naruko, there's no need to explain further. But I hurt you, He smiled and she blushed before embracing Naruto more. Doesn't matter, it's over now, and you're in my arms right now, so why should I care? He said. With her, he felt at ease and whole. Perhaps this had always been his fate. Naruko raised his head and met his eyes. Kaze, what do you know about Fox? I know a few things. His true identity? He had a true identity? His real name was Naruto. He was like me in another dimension. So, you know about that. Is what he said true? Probably, he told very few people, and he seemed sincere, even had pictures of things from the future. What? You seem a lot like him. They were pressed as close together as possible, and they remained silent for what felt like hours and seconds mixed together. Time seemed to be looping endlessly, and their heartbeats were timed. He helped train me, he rubbed off on me, I guess. As their hands were clasped together, love blossomed through them. Naruto blinked and chuckled a little. What's so funny? He laughed as her face attempted to look like a tomato, and then he leaned in to whisper in her ear, saying, I was just thinking it's good I was so tired, or I would be sleeping in the nude. He laughed and, after a brief kiss, slipped out of bed and left the room, saying, maybe it's not too late to be, and you could join me. He assumed that the new people he saw either came in the middle of the night or slept for a few days. He stretched a little and yawned before making his way to the restroom. Naruto ignored Sasuke and continued to walk, acting as though he was still angry. Glad to see you're up, sleeping beauty. Perhaps guilt will help me learn a new jutsu that he is familiar with. I've always wanted to learn Chidori. Come on, Kazuya, it's not our fault you were so suspicious. You just seem one step ahead of everyone with training. We can never catch up no matter how hard we try. You're always so calm when it comes to battle, so we couldn't help think that you were different. While Sasuke walked beside him, offering sporadic justifications for his forgiveness until he threw up his hands in frustration, Naruto remained silent and laughed inwardly as he went down the hall. What can I do to make you forgive us? Well, actually I forgave Naruko. Anyways, you can give me a cool jutsu that Kakashi teaches you. What kind? Naruto calmly leveled his gaze on Sasuke and said, it's a lightning jutsu. I've wanted it for a long time. If he teaches you a technique called Chidori, then you tell me, only then will I forgive you. However, he was secretly laughing at his friend's blindness despite having the best eyes in the world. Alright, I will see what I can do. Silently applauding my jutsu victory, Naruto grinned before entering the restroom. He wouldn't use it much because, although it was a very loud and ostentatious assassination technique, it was also a very powerful one that could penetrate the Raikage's armor. Something has been bothering Naruto a lot lately, so he yawned a little as he left the restroom and looked around before leaving. He had a feeling that telling Naruko who he was would not sit well with her, and he was never one for secrets, so he knew that hiding his identity from her wouldn't last long. As he made his way back to his room, he shook his head slightly to get rid of the images and thoughts in his mind. He also noticed that his clothes had holes in them from the few jutsu the genins had thrown at him. He closed his eyes and smiled a little as he thought of his old friends. He missed them terribly, but it was easier to remember them now that he was here because their memories still exist, albeit in their younger guises. With a sigh, Naruto slipped into his room and proceeded to the bathroom, cracking his neck. He hastily undressed and began changing. As he reached for his pants and put on his underwear, the door opened to reveal Naruko standing there in a towel. Naruko, with her damp hair clinging to her body, and Naruto, with one foot inside the leg of his pants, gazed at one another for a moment. Before Naruko screamed and hurried over to Naruto, their gazes briefly followed the other person's body. His nose was bleeding, but not from the attack, when she screamed, "Pervert!" and gave him a hard knee to the face, sending him out the door and into the wall. He shook his head and wiped his nose before putting on his pants and waiting by the door for the rest of his clothes. She shouldn't raise her leg up that high while in a towel, he said. Really, she shouldn't even return to the bathroom after taking a shower, he said, letting out a sigh and tilting his head before attempting to recall whether she had anything in there. His eyes suddenly widened as he recalled her carrying a brush into the bathroom and some clothes that were sitting close to the counter. Oh, she must have just gone to get her brush because when she returned, he blushed deeply and shook his head. He couldn't help himself, but she walked away after giving him a huff. He chuckles and says, "You look very nice under that towel," before avoiding another knee and rushing to the bathroom to change. This will be enjoyable while it's happening. Endures.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.